Welcome AI community with no borders, with over 80 countries from all continents. I'm thrilled to see these great numbers of participants and locations from various European countries, the US, Israel, Somalia, South Africa, Dubai, Bermuda, Nigeria, Singapore, Botswana, Turkey, Chile, Ecuador, Egypt, Indonesia, Ghana, India, Venezuela, Uganda, Zimbabwe, Pakistan, Japan, Jordan, Guatemala, Australia, New Zealand, Peru, and many more. Let me know in the chat where you are joining us from. Last month, we had a marvelous start with how to build an AI Center of Excellence. Thank you all for your great feedback and comments on social media as well as via email. You all know how one works hard, tries best, and hopes to satisfy one's community. But in this virtual world, it gets so much harder. Therefore, all your messages were touching us and our SwissCognitive team very much. You energize us. Now, I want to invite my co-founder, Andy, who makes everything run behind the scene, to say hello to you.
Hi. I personally, huge thanks you for your trust and contribution from my side too. And enjoy the lovely event with us. And I hand over to you, Dalit. All the best.
Thanks a lot. By 2024, global spending on AI is expected to reach $110 billion. Let's learn how AI fosters the primary and secondary sectors. What is the role of AI in the process of tuning raw materials into tangible consumer goods? Sometimes it's hard to see and understand where AI supported the final output, like in jams, cosmetics, t-shirts, food, or airplanes. We will hear today a variety of keynotes, use cases, and panel discussions with multinational companies like H&M, Nestlé, BCG, Airbus, Rolls-Royce, or Gübelin, and many more. The grande finale will be about AI for aerospace, with the Airbus head advisor on artificial intelligence technologies, Romaric Redon. So ensure to remain with us. In the name of the speakers and the SwissCognitive team, I invite you to share your learnings and insights on social media and boost the discussion around our all-passion AI. And last but not least, benefit from the section of chat and Q&A, and watch out for downloads during each session. And now let's jump straight into the real stuff and do expectation management. Please welcome with me our first speakers, an AI expert, Eva Schönleitner, who will talk about the transformation of AI hype into reality. Eva, you are the CEO of Create.io, the developer and supplier of Create database, the purpose-built database optimized on machine data and AI use cases. You are originally from Austria, where you also right now studied chemistry and mathematics and hold an MBA from Emory University in Atlanta. You spent 20 years in the US in sales, marketing, and product management roles in the high-tech sector. You gained additional international experience in Central and Eastern Europe in senior management positions, and most recently built global digital partnerships at ABB as part of the company's digital strategy. Eva, the virtual stage is yours.
The first speaker of this wonderful conference. I thought, what could I say this year? We've been talking about AI for several years now, but I believe strongly, and the numbers back it up, that this year is the year that the AI hype really turns into reality. Why am I saying this? AI is really, if you look at the latest IDC tracker, they forecast that the AI revenues for this year to be over $300 billion. And to forecast in 2024 to go up over $500 billion with an annual growth of over 17%. I particularly found this nice picture of the rising sun here. It's already risen and it's gonna rise even more. as we go forward into the next this year and the next few years in terms of AI compute and use of AI in our industries. What kind of technologies are we seeing here? The technologies and also the services are starting to mature. We have the hyperscalers. We have new connectivity options, including 5G. There are specific databases and technologies for machine learning out there today, and a number of AI tools and applications. Combined of those, these are standalone applications, but if these are combined, actually you're seeing an emergence of AI software platforms in the market as well, specifically for certain verticals already. And also a number of implementers, meaning system integrator, to help our customers to implement these more complex machine learning and AI technologies. When you look at the latest IDC forecast, the two top lines that I'm showing here, the purple and the orange one, are actually these AI software platforms and the application development and deployment services. These are going to be showing the highest growth as we go forward. What kind of AI? I like to look at the 7 patterns of AI, research by another firm, Cognitive. And in the past, we've seen the red and the green areas, the hyper-personalization, us personalized services as us as consumers, and also the green area, conversation, human interactions, think chatbots and the like. Now what we're seeing, actually all 7 areas, and what kind of things are we seeing in applications are we seeing today to solve complex problems? One of them is to recognize images, objects, and especially unstructured data. The second one would be to use insight for predictive analytics systems. Then to spot patterns and anomalies in large data sets, all for industrial use and digitalization initiatives. Look further, autonomous systems with minimal or no human involvement, and also a large number of simulation scenarios of production lines and other goal-driven problems. So the use of AI has broadly expanded as we've gone into this new year, this year and going forward. What kind of industries are doing this? The short answer is all. I've just highlighted a few here: manufacturing, discrete and process manufacturing, smart cities, smart buildings, all kinds of forms of energy businesses, life sciences, medtech, healthcare, transportation. You see my attempt here to have trucks and ships and planes and all other forms of transportations, and then some, I wouldn't say specialty industries, just highlighting a few. If I missed yours, then I'm quite sure that it was not because you're not doing anything, but just I went to just highlight a few of them. What kind of learnings would I have? Looking at these new scenarios and the businesses and all these industries going out, coming from the software area myself. The first thing is what I realized is AI is really creating a new essential type of business. It's SaaS, yes, but it's new. It's new in terms of the players you're seeing out there. It's new in terms of the cost drivers and also the margins. Please feel free to contact me for more details on this. But it's definitely not just a typical SaaS business, especially around the advanced learnings and analytics and learning systems that create a completely different cost drivers on top of a typical SaaS business. To have a highly scalable data infrastructure is key. It's nice to start small pilots and just with a few tools, but once you scale at a production level or enterprise level, you must have the scalable data infrastructure in place. Otherwise, it'll crumble really quickly and it just won't deploy. To define a clear data governance model is also key. So that you know who owns the data, where does the data go, what data goes where, and where is also the master for what. And the last one is, or one before last is, over the last 3-4 years, or actually several years, many companies have been trying to prototype things, and that is actually still the way to go. Test something out, prototype it, then from there go into a small, let's say, production or use case, a real-time use case of your company. Once that works, then scale it into more use cases. and across the whole organization. So what I've seen in, let's pick a discrete manufacturing company. You start with one line, one use case. From there, you go to the same line, maybe multiple lines in one plant. From there, you go from one plant to multiple plants and scale it out. As you're then doing this, you work on the next use case and go the same way, the iterative way. And that works really well. That way the risk is minimized, and actually the speed of deployment is, also you might think it's slower, but it's actually not slower, because safety is also very key, and these are operational impacts that you're having. So it's extremely important to make sure that whatever you do actually works perfectly well. The last learning actually I would like to share with you is really to optimize around the cloud on the edge. We all know in the past that services were on-prem, then we all moved onto the cloud. But as you then scale, especially you scaling the analytics, the machine learning and AI across enterprise global sites, the amount of data becomes staggering. And to run this at 100% in the cloud is one, cost prohibitive. It also does not allow all use cases. Think remote mining facilities, moving trucks that don't always have connectivity and so on. So it's critical that you find a solution for both technology as well as workflow, that where you have some compute and analysis on the edge, but then also have the cloud to basically train the learning models to manage out of your clouds. So you don't have a classic on-prem deployment that needs management across every facility, every truck, every so on, but you have a central management, central visibility, while you're having still compute and analysis, and especially real-time analysis on the edge. So these were the kind of learnings my company and our customers have had over the last 3 years of how to really go from a small pilot to something that is enterprise-wide, highly scalable, highly sustainable, and also works in terms of the cost-benefit perspective. I'd like to thank you very much, and I'm sure our future speakers, the ones behind me, will give us many examples of what I just mentioned. Dalis, I'm giving it back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eva. Expectation management is an important success factor for the acceptance and development of AI. And your broad experience sharing with our SwissCognitive was a huge benefit. Now, you mentioned trucks and connectivity, 5G, cloud, and on edge. And I think this is one of the things that is very important, that we realize AI is definitely not isolated. It is a combination. I have one question from the audience asking you, which industry do you see lacking behind the most?
I'm having a really hard time understanding you. Which industry, what?
Is lacking behind the most?
I am truly sorry, but the connection is terrible. I can't understand you.
Don't worry.
I'm not sure what you're asking. I'm really sorry.
We have WhatsApp. I'll send it to you via WhatsApp.
Yes, please. And I'll also type it right back into the chat. And hopefully we get this answered here quickly. I apologize for the bad internet.
So I just send it to you. Now, this is a typical example how good it is that we have several devices and connectivities. And one of the things that we always see, connectivity is basic infrastructure, and sitting in Europe is showing us that even here we sometimes have our problem. Eva.
I just got your text. I got your text. So 1 second. So industry, I think most industries are more or less at the same stage from what I can see, the traditional ones. What I'd like to say is actually that Europe is the most advanced in terms of regions, while especially in Germany, but that's where the industries are very heavy in the DACH area. And we've been experimenting in that region the most over the last several years. So they are more advanced. It goes across the multiple segments. But in terms of region, clearly Europe is ahead, followed by actually Japan, and the last one is the US, catching up fast now. I think it's also a question of cost pressures. So that would be my twist to that answer.
Great, thanks a lot, Eva. So this is definitely also one of the reasons, probably, we have so many people around the globe from different countries and locations exchanging their experience. Thanks, Eva. Back to Vienna, and hope to see you soon in person. Now, AI
Thank you so much.
Welcome. AI in a tangible product development. Sometimes it is hard to see and understand where AI support the final output. Jana, you will lead us through this bright panel. You worked in the tech executive positions for over 20 years, started with startup companies in Stockholm and Helsinki, and moved to M&A, scouting and international partnership in Italy. You co-founded the Rome and Milan chapter of the popular global networks events Mobile Mondays that were essentially creating the early mobile industry ecosystem. Jana, you worked with pioneers of the IoT in Silicon Valley, but moved to cognitive computing with Loop AI Group San Francisco back in 2016. Since then, you've been defining the Loop AI brand of the global market and create worldwide visibility to the company. With you, we have Mohammed.
I think the transition coming from
you're working as an AI specialist in Rolls-Royce, and we're currently leading projects in the field of computer visioning and natural language problems to solve complex business problems. Prior to Rolls-Royce, you've worked in various domains like retail, telecom, banking, energy, and utility. One of your recent achievements in your contribution to an internal document digitalization product that uses computer visioning to its core and has already helped the organization save millions of pounds. Main focus of your work in Rolls-Royce is to help solve complex problems using AI and machine learning. Together with you, we have Alain. Alain, you are the CTO of H&M Group and are responsible for strengthening the company's innovation and digitalization effort and enhancing the shopping experience for H&M Group's global family of brands and businesses. You are an experienced digital transformation leader with nearly 30 years of experience innovating enterprises architectures, IT strategy, and cloud technology, and have transformed global businesses through IT and technology, improving customer services and business processes. Together with you, we have Craig. Craig, you are the founder and CEO of sentian.ai, an AI technology company that is transforming the world's agriculture information into AI data models that power decision-making and preserves the future of farming. In 2013, you were one of the first Google Glass explorers. Your vision for Glass led your team to develop FARMWAVE, the world's first wearable application for crop scouting. FARMWAVE offered farmers a truly hands-free solution utilizing image recognition AI, machine learning, and deep learning. Today, you lead a seasoned team of visionaries, technical engineers, designers, and strategists working together to introduce FARMWAVE. Powered by a proprietary and extensive data sets, which includes 3 approved patents, FARMWAVE adds value with an unfilled intelligent platform across multiple channels of agriculture. With integrated smart tools, FARMWAVE increases agricultural profits in the billions on an annual basis, and we will hear more about that later. Last but not least, we do have Daniel, a geologist by formation. As part of your PhD in mineralogy. This is something about human intelligence. Mineralogy. Is that correct? Hopefully. You will correct me later. You worked on a joint research project on superconducted at the IBM Research Lab in Switzerland, together with George J. Bernard, the former Nobel Prize in Physics from 1987. After working as strategy consultant, sorry, I'm getting dry. After working as strategy consultant at an international management consultancy, you took over the position of managing director of the Gübelin Gym Lab in 2003, overseeing the expansion of the lab to Hong Kong and New York. You're also in charge of the Provenance Proof Initiative, which develops a range of technologies to bring transparency into gemstones industry. This is really cool, Daniel, and I'm just looking forward to see your lab in the future. Now, please, the stage is yours.
Wonderful, thank you. So this is a very versatile artificial intelligence panel. Each of you gentlemen comes from a different industry and has used AI to resolve very different kinds of problems. So I would like to start by hearing a bit of background from you. So Alan, would you like to start? Would you like to give us some examples about how H&M has been utilizing AI to improve the processes and products?
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to join such esteemed colleagues here. I feel maybe the least qualified specifically on AI, but certainly have been a practitioner, if you may, or a user of the benefits of technology and AI for a whole variety of the years. At H&M, at large corporation, what I've learned over the years is that, in very simple terms for people that I talk to internally, is that a human can make a decision in every second, but it takes 3-4 weeks to implement. And with the use of technology, with the use of AI, we can not only make decisions faster, we can make 1,000 decisions in a second, and we can start implementing 1,000 decisions. So every aspect of every business that we operate in is being mandated, is being asked to apply AI technologies, from our internal processes to how we work with our consumers, to our consumer research. So it's very broad when you talk about large corporations, and I'm sorry I'm not more specific, but it literally is every aspect of everything we do, from our PLM to others. So it's very, very easy to see where it's going in the future for us.
Awesome, that's remarkable. You are utilizing AI everywhere. It's like all over, everywhere in your activity. Craig, I would like to ask you instead, the process of diagnosing crop destroying bugs can take up to many days or even weeks. But thanks to your new technology, it's actually, the time has been narrowed down to a few seconds. So can you tell us more about this?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having me. We started in 2014 building our own data set around plant pathology. And since then, we have continued building it out in multiple crops and their respective pathogen and pests. So for us, it did start taking a very long time with a lot of experts and about 16 universities helping us to identify tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of images that we could take a picture and it would tell you what disease or pest that you have. This turned into a mobile app that's being used all around the world by smallholder growers, especially in developing countries, to get results in real time. We only have so many crops that we've built out on. We continue to expand on that, but we built some internal tooling that allows you to take a picture and literally in about 2 seconds, it'll tell you what disease or pest you are looking at. It also allows you to communicate with an expert online to verify those results. But it's about narrowing that time in which we can identify something to when we can then treat it.
Wow, that's amazing. Daniel, gemstones and cognitive technologies, especially AI, how are you connecting these two things at your labs?
Yeah, I might want to give an explanation first what we are doing, being a gem testing laboratory. the gemstones, they depend, of course, on the value of a gemstone depends on the authenticity, on the identity. And the one peculiarity of the gemstone business is that it also depends very much where a stone is coming from. So think of a blue sapphire. If that stone comes from the Kashmiri mountains in the India-Pakistani area, the value might be 10 times higher than the exactly same stone that is coming from Madagascar, for example. So it has developed into something as a brand. And as a gem lab, what we are doing is not only testing the identity, but also the geographic origins of from which country is it coming. And we do that by looking very detailed, in a detailed manner into the gemstone. We make microscopic observation, we take spectroscopic data, we make a trace element, ultra trace element analysis of a big number of elements. And this gives us a pattern which allows us then, on the basis of or in comparison to a reference collection that we have a collection of some 30,000 stones from all commercially relevant sources of gemstones. And based on that comparison, we can then determine if a stone is now indeed coming from Kashmir or from Burma or from Tanzania or wherever. And that is defining the value. It's very important for the trade to know that. And we talk about expensive stones, which can easily reach $500,000 in value, one stone, or multiple amounts of dollar for one stone. Our people are experts. They come with a PhD in mineralogy, or earth sciences, solid state physics, geochemistry, and so on. And these people are, it takes a long time to make them expert, and you have to train them for years or decades. They collect experience, and once they are experts and once they are valuable for us as a company, they might leave, or they might go to the competition, or they might go into retirement. If they stay, they want to go to conferences. They are expensive and high maintenance to have them. And what we are doing while we are deploying AI is we want to kind of become less dependent on those experts. We kind of want to put the knowledge that we have gathered over. We are in business now since 97 years in total. The methods have developed, but it was always an expert business. And what we are using AI for is to kind of make sense of the data we have collected of the hundreds of thousands of stones over these 97 years and put them into algorithm to help us in doing the job, not only better and become less dependent from these human experts, but also in a more consistent way.
So almost 100 years of history, and now you are totally transforming it with AI. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Mohammed, Rolls-Royce is a massive industrial organization with a lot of supply chain needs. How do you use NLP and computer vision for optimizing your supply chains?
Hi, thanks for having me here, Jana, and I'm really excited to be part of this. Rolls-Royce is obviously a 100-plus-year-old organization and a company that makes highly complex and a very high-value physical thing. So obviously, within our supply chain, there are certain parts which very few companies across the world can actually make them for our supply chain unit. So that actually put us at a quite high level of risks because we don't have the luxury of sourcing them from an infinite number of suppliers across the world. So, and on top of that, we certainly have a lot of unstructured. You can say it's a lot of incredibly dumb or unstructured data within our supply chain unit. So we have information held in PDFs, informations in designs, or we have information is stored in various databases all along. So on what we can say is, like, over the last couple of years, we have tried to develop the capability in natural language processing and computer vision that can actually help us to extract these informations and get some meaningful insights out of it, and to use to optimize our supply chain unit. And All right. Oh, yeah, I was just thinking what else we are actually. So yeah, on top.
There's
So
a lot of stuff, right?
yeah, there's a lot of thought to go, and yeah. So basically, what we are trying to do is we're trying to use this natural language capability to make our supply chain unit more adaptive, more flexible, and more rigid. Not just, I mean, to make a point, like during this the pandemic that's going on, with the onset of COVID-19. We have used the capability, the output of these capabilities a lot in order to actually make massive savings within our supply chain unit. And we have also, it's like we have used the information to actually do a lot of scenario modeling that actually allows the buyers to provide the information of what the best suppliers is across the globe. And
Wow.
and NLP and coming to NLP and computer vision are really interesting in this field, and they are pretty novel as well. Like you can extract weather information, or you can extract the information about the suppliers. Maybe they would have a bad quarter, or they were in news with some bad reputation, or into some corruption practices. So those all gives the buyers the information about the suppliers, and they can make the strategic decision to help place the orders. And coming back to the computer vision side, we have actually developed a capability wherein we are rendering information, wherein we are actually using engineering drawings to render from 2D to 3D capabilities, and that helps the buyer to understand about the physical properties of the materials, like the volume or the different parts that is used. Because Rolls-Royce, when they place an order, they actually own the whole part, the whole raw material, and whereas the suppliers provide us with the finished part. So if we have the information about the volume and other informations, we will be able to renegotiate with the supplier in order to actually get the best price out of it, because they eventually sell out in the secondary market. So yeah, obviously NLP and computer vision are really playing some great job in optimizing our supply chain unit here
Across the organization again,
Yeah.
it seems. So that's remarkable. So I bet right now in the audience there are quite a few people who are actually working on their own AI-powered product development and would like to hear what are the main takeaways and learnings from your successful processes. So how would you get started now? What kind of challenges have you noted in the process, and what did your team do particularly well? Let's see. Craig, would you like to start?
Sure. I think for anybody that is looking to get started in doing anything with artificial intelligence, it's about finding the value. What is the value that's going to be derived from whatever it is that you are building? We can solve for lots of problems, but ultimately it's finding the value. When we started FARMWAVE, we were building first on Google Glass to be the first sort of hands-free wearable heads-up display, but then to a mobile app that would allow you to take a picture and get an identification and a result in a matter of seconds. And that was a value of time savings, which is great, but it's not very quantifiable because it's different for everyone. But then we started moving and putting the equipment on machinery, putting the AI on machinery. And this was a very different value add proposition. Now you're talking about reducing loss in one country and one crop that adds up to being, $1.4 billion annually in just the United States and just corn. So we find that very much like with big consulting firms who solve small problems, but they add up to be great value, artificial intelligence is the same way. Kind of as Alan had said before, we can solve, little problems, but it sort of grows, and it's the very same concept here. So I think finding the value is very, very important when looking at building artificial intelligence. You need to find that value, and then that'll take you the rest of the way.
It makes sense, definitely. Daniel, what do you think?
Yeah, in our case, what we were doing quite okay, I think, from the beginning is accepting the heterogeneity of the data that we are looking at. So basically, as I was hinting to before, is we have a fortune of data, a wealth of data from over the decades that we have collected, and now we wanted to kind of get that knowledge and make sense of that, of all these data. And they're different. There are different type of data. We have highly structured, fully quantitative data, such as trace element concentrations. We have somehow structured data, such as spectra. You know, if you have a UV light or infrared light going through the stone and collecting molecular information of the state of the in that stone, and then you have pretty unstructured data. You know, might have you know, handwritten text of the experts, what they describe, what they see in the stone, and then of course you have a personal bias of these individuals. These are experts, you know, and every expert is a little diva and might have his own way in expressing things. And then we have also an evolution over the decades of analytical methods. You know, nowadays we use laser ablation ICP-MS, which is a type of mass spectrometry where we can have much more analytical detail that what we had 50 years ago, where it was basically just a microscopic description. So to somehow now train the system, you know, train the algorithm, build the algorithm on such a diverse, heterogeneous set of data is important to accept that. So that's one thing, you know, that we were starting the project with the knowing that we have to deal with a very heterogeneous type of data source. That's one thing. The other thing is we are cooperating with a company, CSCM, here in Switzerland. These guys are very good. They have all the AI knowledge, which we do not have, you know. We are a very small company. We're a niche player. But to kind of bring the knowledge of the matter, which is gemstones and gemstone analytics, together with the people that understand AI, you know, and have these people talking together functionally and productive. That's what I think is key. We have already had projects before on other topics with that same research partner, and that is helping a lot, you know, that you do not have some kind of, you know, wasting time and resources in having dysfunctional communication.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant, brilliant. Mohammed, what about you?
Yeah. So as part of the Rolls-Royce Data Labs, or more specifically the AI Hub team member, we get contacted a lot by different business units of Rolls-Royce, like be it civil aerospace, be it defense or submarines. So basically discuss about the problems that they are facing, and also to discuss if we can solve some of the problems using artificial intelligence or machine learning. Now, using artificial intelligence isn't much difficult when you are a companies like Google or Microsoft, where you have thousands and thousands of label data at your fingertips. But in a company like ours, where we have unfortunately haven't made the practice of creating data, standard data, or you can say like we haven't actually made the practice of in the product life cycle, we were never creating enough data points, or we were not noting it down. So basically, we are not a digital first organization. But yeah, some of the challenges I will say when we faced what we faced during the problem solving exercise is like so you have like tons and tons of data lying either in Excel sheets, or you have data in PDFs scanned as images, or you have data stored in various databases, and not to mention the access issues. Like some people will have access to some database while others will have the others. And on top of that, sometimes you might get a pushback the moment you mention artificial intelligence from the business team members. So that's another challenge. But I would really like to but I think what we really did well is because we have always taken the approach of a design thinking to solve any of the business problem, wherein we actually empathize to understand the users, what they are doing, and then we kind of brainstorm to redefine the problems, and then we ideate. We actually try to create the solution in order to create a quick prototype to test, basically. So the design thinking approach has really helped us, and it has also helped us to actually understand some of the ill-defined problems, and in various cases the problem was actually unknown, but we were able to figure out while doing these steps. So yeah.
Very interesting. Lot of very good hints for all of us. Alan, what would you like to share? Best practices.
So at H&M, we have close to 100 people in our group. We've got this fantastic, diverse group of scientists and mathematicians and psychologists. It's so diverse. It was actually very humbling experience to walk in last July, last August, and understand how far the company is. The challenge in any company, when you start trying to determine what is the value of any technology, and certainly in the AI ML space, is we're dealing, when you're in an early stage, you're dealing with people in your own organization that don't fully understand the power. They don't understand what can be done with the new technologies, and it forces different thinking. And so part of the value that a AI organization brings, or AI brings to any company, is it unlocks new ways of thinking and new ways of problem solving. You may go ahead and start thinking you're going to solve one problem, but the reality is that once you start understanding, and you start understanding how that technology can be applied, it leads to all kinds of different solutions that the users didn't know were possible. And when the users don't understand something's possible, it creates tremendous value, but you have to be an educator. So right now we're in the stage of educating people on what can be done. The ultimate goal is to democratize the data and to democratize AI. And we're seeing tools and techniques that are moving us in that direction. But we have to, and that's where the real value is going to be extracted, when we can use visual inferencing and other things on the edge by employees that are not fully trained in the use of the technology, but the tools are making it possible for them to run the applications. And then we can take our scientists and we can put them on the very, very difficult problems. So we're on this journey. It's some of the things that we've been tackling are looking at, how do you predict the next fashion trend? How do we understand what the assortments need to look like? How can we solve the areas of the materials that we need to purchase so we can reduce the amount of waste? So all of these things are problems that our industry's faced for years. We have a group of people that are fantastic, and they're tackling these things one at one. But at the same time, we have to bring our business colleagues along. And that's where we're going to measure the value. The more that they understand the data, the more they understand how to use it to make business decisions and to enforce what they're doing, then we're going to see the real value. So education is a part of everybody in AI world's job today.
Yeah, it's definitely that. And speaking of industry, let's talk a bit about industry-specific matters. Daniel, would you like to start? So you have been the managing director of Gübelin Gem Lab for 18 years. How do you perceive these, the technologies are now developing and changing and contributing to your entire industry?
Yeah, I perceive technology as the way that makes things happen. I can, again, when I talk about our industry, the gemstone industry, you have to know it's a very complex supply chain. Gemstones are usually mined in areas in sub-Saharan Africa. They might be mined somewhere in Southeast Asia, remote places quite often. And the value chain, the supply chain is very, very long, very informal, complex. And there is little information, confirmed, verifiable information coming with the stones. And that's something that nowadays consumers won't accept anymore. If a private person buys a piece of jewelry at the retailer, at the jeweler, they want to know where the stone is coming from. They want to be sure that certain ESG standards are considered. They want to be sure that there's no harm is done by that with that purchase, or even more, they want to know that they might be doing something good or that they can feel good about it. And our industry until recently was totally incapable and also largely unwilling to give the transparency, because many people were having their business model was sometimes based on the intransparency of the supply chain. Now with technologies, it changed. Now we have technologies such as nanoparticles that you can put into the stone at the source. We have blockchain technology. Our company has actually built the industry standard where meanwhile more than 300 companies are putting the data from the miner to the cutter to the wholesaler, jeweler, retailer, putting all their stones on that platform to track it with a distributed ledger technology. And all this was only possible, it was only happening because of technology. In the years, decades before, we just kept kicking the can down the road, without we talked about it, and we had all those ambitious goals. But now that we have the technology, there's no more excuses. Now we actually have to do it, and we can do it, and that's what I see as the biggest value of technology.
Great, awesome. Okay, we'll be really quick, right? So, Mohammed, traditional machine vision applications requires tons of labeled image data in order to build robust systems. So you mentioned that in the aviation industry previously, it hasn't been the practice over the life cycles of products to actually capture this kind of data. So how is Rolls-Royce trying to overcome this problem? I think we have very, very little time left. So.
Yep. I'll be quick. You're actually spot on, Jana. We are not like of Google or Microsoft where we have like tons of label data, but we are from manufacturing or engineering industry. So at Rolls-Royce, we are mainly taking two approaches to overcome this problem. And the first one is to actually develop a quick product or tool, which the business can also use to extract information from these images at a much faster rate compared to what a person can do manually. And with that, that actually allows us to validate the machine learning algorithms that is actually used inside those tools. And it also allows us to create a lot of training data. And the second approach that we have used for some of the use cases is we have generated a lot of synthetic data. And over the course of some of the projects, we have proved this to the organization that we are able to develop good machine learning models using just synthetic data to aid into some inspections or to help a design engineer to actually look into some of the information hidden within the images. So at times we are using the combination of both, like both of these approaches are coupled together, or sometimes they can be just used independently, wherein we can just use these tools to extract information as fast as possible.
That's fantastic. That's something definitely new. Alan, on a wider scope, in what way does AI, cognitive computing, and all the new technologies contribute to your industry? You sort of went there, but would you like to give a really brief, quick outlook on that?
Sure, thank you. I think it's changing everything. Whenever we talk to any new technology companies that come in to talk to us, it's 60-70% of the time it's about AI and ML. It is the wave of the future. It's not even the wave of the future. It's here today. If we're going to compete with the next generation, and we are competing very, very well with the next generation of companies in our space, we have to use the same tools and technologies and capabilities. And so it is top of mind on everything we do every day. And we're always looking for new partners and new partnerships that will be able to allow us to leapfrog, not just where we are, but leapfrog where we believe the competition is going to. So it is top of mind, is the best way to say it.
Perfect. Awesome. Craig, this is our last question. How do you perceive repetitive business models to change when achieving digital transformation with AI? So as opposed to traditional software as service?
Yeah, I think traditional software as a service, you're able to subscribe to a software platform or subscribe to something that you then use for your own capability, kind of how you see it. But when you're building AI, in my opinion, it's going to be very much custom built. For example, Mohammed's company, Rolls-Royce, builds cars. Toyota builds cars, but I'll bet they both do it very differently. So therefore, building AI solutions internally, is going to be more of a custom built process. So I think, if you're an outside firm that is building, for these kinds of companies, you're not going to find yourself in a very repetitive business model. It's going to be different.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. This has been a great panel. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
To you, Andy.
Thank you.
Wow. I was just thinking about the combined years of experience that we share here with all of you. I mean, just thinking of Gübelin, over 100-year-old company, the data, I actually put a lot of notes down, and I think we just don't going to have enough time to go through all of that, but it was really, really interesting. I'm definitely thrilled, and I bet that also our audience had a lot of takeaways. Before I'm going, yeah, that's about technology. So I hope that all of them are on YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. One of the really interesting things that I've heard about what you all said, and this is something that I would really like to emphasize a little bit more. We're hearing a lot about the ethical aspects, responsibility, and so forth and so forth. Mostly saying, oh, we need to be careful because AI can harm all kinds of things. But when I'm listening to you guys, I must say, there are so many great things that are supporting not only the human being, but also making our lives more safe. And one thing that actually you said, Daniel, is that before, some of the business model was based on transparency. Coming from Switzerland, one of the financial hubs, I must say, we learned our lesson. And obviously, we have a lot of other lessons. Now, this is for me, coming from SwissCognitive, a very important thing to say, hey, guys out there, AI is supporting us much more. And we need to be open and really apply and see where it can support us in our businesses. I mean, also what you said, Alan, with regards to H&M, just reducing waste by using data, predicting trends. Obviously, most of you are going to say, why can't they predict trends? Because they know all my data, because I'm on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on you name it. I'm sharing all this here. But at the end of the day, we always need to check. It's also a huge, huge benefit to the world, to the human being, and supporting the sustainable goals of the UN. So, sorry, I just had to say that because I just hate it when people say how AI harms and is awful and we need to be careful. Yes, we do, and I think we all are. But thanks a lot for sharing that. From Rolls-Royce to H&M to Gübelin to FARMWAVE, what I'm thinking is fantastic to see and also hear. This is definitely one of the sustainable goals that can be supported with one of applications like yours. So, many thanks, Jana, for your great moderation, and thanks, Muhammad, Alan, Craig, and Daniel for your thought-provoking insights. Now it's time to deep dive in a use case using AI to optimize automation and control. Martin and Ivan will present the next use case. Martin, you are an entrepreneur who spent the last 14 years with AI. You're passionate about startups and are involved as an advisor or board member in several startups working as diverse AI fields as predictive healthcare, finance AI, image recognition, natural language, and text generation. You are the founder and CEO of industrial AI company sentian.ai. You are also a self-described foodie with a passion for grilling over open fire and winter pizzas in the cold of Sweden. I guess you guys have snow as we have right now. Ivan, you have a background in condensed matter physics and optics and a PhD in experimental physics. During the postdoc time, you were a researcher at the German National Measurement Institute. The focus of the research was on the aging effects in high temperature thermometers for the next generation of power plants. Today, you are at the R&D department at Jumo, where your work includes development of thin film platinum resistance temperature sensors and the process involved in the manufacturing of these sensors. Your work is driven by the desire to understand how the world functions from a subatomic level of everyday life and beyond. Guys, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much for that introduction. For those of you who do not know Sentian, we're an industrial AI company that has two products, one in the area of process optimization and the other one in optimizing logistics, supply chain, and planning. But today it's all about the control side of things. So what we see when we look at the industrial pain points and AI together, see there's a lot of focus on maintenance, and in particular on predictive maintenance. And we actually made a small survey of the pulp and paper companies in the Nordics and found out that only one of the publicized projects was not about predictive maintenance. So we think it's sort of time to go beyond predictive maintenance for the industry and look at a long list of other pain points that you can apply AI to. So cost reductions, quality and scrap, emissions, yield, obviously. One thing that is interesting is that they have all one thing in common. They have control systems in common. So let's dive in a little bit into that area. We have SCADA, DCS, and PLCs. That's a sort of workhorse in the control stack. And then we have, for the more advanced situations and more complicated cases and more valuable processes, you can use advanced process control. Technology created in last century and has somewhat reached its peak. It's not really cloud connected in most cases, and it's quite expensive to install and run. So with the new AI tools, we're really getting new tools for process control. So we have AI analytics or predictive analytics, if you want to call it that. AI brings new opportunities to this whole area. It's generally speaking faster and cheaper than the old generation. You get tailor-made solutions for your problems. It's cloud-based software as a service and can solve a range of different things that was problematic before. And we're now also seeing that we're moving to dedicated intelligent products and even process optimization as service and things like that. So that brings me to our first welded case. This is all about variation reduction in an industrial setting. And it's about adding intelligence to control for improved quality. And our partner in this is Jumo.
Thank you, Martin. This will now be a little bit difficult because we don't see the slides. We at Jumo provide solutions for the areas of sensors and automation. We started with platinum wire-wound thermometers, later added platinum thin film thermometers and sensors. And furthermore, we offer sensors for different measurements units like pressure, conductivity, pH values. On the other side, we also provide control units and automation systems where we use our sensors as a whole engineering service for our customers. In the thin film temperature sensor manufacturing, we are operating in a high-tech manufacturing with a lot of automated systems and robots. And we are operating in a highly competitive market. And for this, AI is strategic for us for cost reduction and increase in revenue. Because we don't have so much AI knowledge in-house, we searched for a partner to support us in this. And we found Sentian. And we started a project on thin film temperature sensors. The next slide would be our production process. We start with a bare ceramics aluminum oxide substrate, so ceramics, and we finish with a thin film platinum temperature sensor. And this production involves several steps with different time lags. And our sensors are characterized by basically two values. It's the temperature coefficient of resistance and the resistance at the ice point, so 0 degrees centigrade. And these are our two values we want to set during our production. And the problem now is that our production has several time lags because we have Kanban storage. We have several production steps which are quick, several are quite slow. And exactly. Now you should see it. And when we produce the sensor, there's a final test, which is a final measurement of our sensors where we determine the TCR, so the temperature coefficient and the resistance. And when we have these two values, we classify it in different tolerance classes. So next slide, please. In our manufacturing process, we encountered process variation which decreased our yield and made it quite difficult to predict. This leads to some production losses where customers had to wait. We couldn't plan how much of different accuracy classes come out of our production, which increased our cost in production of the sensors. And by adding AI to our automation and control system, we wanted to improve sensor accuracy and the overall yield. Now to you, Martin.
Thank you. Here it says on the screen that we didn't have a lot of, I'm going to talk a little bit about the data science challenges. And one of the things was that we didn't have a lot of data. We thought we would have that in the beginning of the project, but we then found out that a lot of the data couldn't be used in the process. So this is quite a normal situation. You have to work with that. We also had a variation that drifted over time, making it more complicated. And it was these sources of variation were very complex and not always fully understood. And this is also another case which is quite common in the industry, that you have a process that kind of works, but you don't quite understand how it works. And AI can be a really good technology to implement in that case because it can maybe understand it better than we can. And there were lag times of several weeks in our process. And this is also a question we get quite a lot. Can we use AI even though we haven't got the data from measurements when we need it for the process? And that can also be solved with data science. And where we put this, our technology into the process was just after the lift-off process in the laser trimming step. And I won't go into details a lot, but we used our sentian controller for the adaptive process variation reduction. And we used a range of different models for imputations and predictions. And we had an automatic recommendation settings that could find the best possible settings for each and every vector that we had happening. Looking at a few of the data science challenges we had, we didn't have a lot of data. So we had to be really, really creative with it. And you can see a clear thing when you have a lot of data, you obviously focus on getting as much information out of that as possible. But when you don't have a lot of data, you have to do a lot more data science on that data. So don't give up if you don't have a lot of data. You can still make it work in many conditions, but not always. We had a variation that drifted over time, so we had to be creative in how we got the data in at the right time for the algorithms. And we were working very closely with Ivan and his colleagues. And we believe that is a key success factors when you have this. So we were really getting a good way of finding shortcuts in the process of creating this solution for Jumo, where we could work together and not spend time on situations where we were looking at noise in the data and so on, because we could find the better places to spend our time. Yes, over to you.
Yeah. So despite the problems with our data, where we thought in the beginning that our data was good and manifold, Sentian was able to deliver a model which we deployed in 2019. So since then, we are using it for this sensor type in the production. And in the qualification process, we saw that the Sentian model increased our proportion of sensors with the highest quality tier by 10%. And what's also nice is that it updates all the training automatically. So our operator has just to provide a production order number, and all the rest is done by the model. In the following, we have had two more models, where one is already in the production, and then the last one is in the moment in the qualification process. So we are happy on this side and using it more and more.
Thank you. So I wanted to just look at some of the more general problems and challenges when it comes to control system and operational problems. So we see that the industry is very high dimensional and very non-linear in its world, while we see that control systems are very linear and rather reactive rather than proactive. And we see examples of overshooting and oscillations in this environment, and undershooting to when it comes to these systems. And that's one side on the control issues. On the operational side, we see variations in input parameters, as in the Jumo case. We see deviations in production quality and high scrap levels. We see that control systems are not always really quickly to adapt to changes, speed versus quality trade-offs, and so on. This all leads to lower yield, higher cost, higher emissions and scrap, and obviously lower quality and other things like that. So we explored various ways to deal with this from an AI perspective, and we tested out a lot of different ways to do it. And we found this fairly new area, which is called model-based reinforcement learning, that is really interesting from that perspective. And with that, we can build inferred dynamics models. So that's really a real-world representation of the process that we're trying to optimize. And we can do that from only the data, which then is a much quicker and better way of doing this than just building all of these systems from scratch. This technology can do scenarios, so it can explore set points and it can learn continuously and then optimize to the right settings at any point in time. And it's also very sample efficient, so we can work with little data, just to take a few of those things. But that brings us all the way back to the original point of what you can do for a range of these areas. And there are a couple of other things that you can do in addition to the high-tech case with Jumo. So I just wanted to touch upon a few different other cases that could be interesting. In chemicals, you can look at it from, it uses a lot of energy, so that's a high cost, and it's also bad for the environment. And this is clearly one of those areas where you can optimize through AI. Another case is pulp and paper, and it's also very energy intensive. And it also adds, in addition to that, a loss of chemicals and water usage that you want to reduce. The output is really key, that it has the absolute highest quality. So, and this is a case where you have a process that is not fully understood, and that is where AI then can come in a really good way. And the last example is in discrete manufacturing and production cells. It's a very flexible method of producing, but also creates a lot of changes and manual steps. And with this kind of technology, you can reduce the number of manual steps and automate some of these things and speed up these changes. And that way you can avoid repeated mistakes and improve quality and yield. So just to summarize some of the key takeaways from this, AI can be applied to many areas. The business cases are really interesting for process optimization. Evolution is fast, from traditional systems to predictive analytics to AI products. And the technology evolution is also fast. We're seeing new areas that can be really beneficial for the industry. Data is key, as you heard in the example. a lot of data is good, but also you can work when you have little data, at least in most cases. You have to just spend a bit more time on it. And finally, access to experts can really speed things up. Right, that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for sharing your practical experience and expertise, Martin and Ivan. And yeah, it is definitely something that we're hearing more or less every time. Data is key. And another thing that you mentioned, and actually has been mentioned at the panel before also, is access to experts, access to the ecosystem, and share experience. Work in the ecosystem with different companies who can bring in their core competences. So thanks a lot again, Martin and Ivan, for being with us. Now, before we go on with the next panel, I just would like to tell you again, we are very sorry, BigMaker is down. Unfortunately, we can't do anything about it. We still leave it open, so you are able to download the documents from there. You can use the chat, but follow us and the discussions on YouTube, Twitter, or LinkedIn. Now, I'm curious to hear about AI on the shop floor. Please welcome with me our moderator, Adrian, and the panelists, Barry, Bill, Dovev, and Thomas. Adrian, you are the founder and director of AI Mexico. Your experience in AI spans 20 years in the global industry. You help companies adopt AI to free workers from repetitive tasks machine can do with less error, increasing profits, leaving the human in control. You support companies who struggle due to an unclear AI adoption plan and insufficient AI workers. This is a problem in LATAM and more developed economies too. AI Mexico helps companies become industry leaders and helps take AI to everyone's company to adapt AI with the goal of triggering growth. With you on the panel, we have Barry. You are an experienced commercial leader in healthcare markets with a combined 30 years experience in pharmaceutical, medical device, and medical technology industries. You and your team at Viral Sign are working to enable the early detection of diseases and conditions through the combined power of infrared technology and AI and machine learning. The company is focused on leveraging its access to screening data for disease states impacting occupational medicine and senior career to enable earlier intervention at the individual and populations level. Then we have Bill. Bill, your executive experience. Sorry, we're still with Bill.
Yeah, I'm Bill. Yeah.
Your executive experience over 30 years spans new product development, technology, and advisory and business transformation service across industries. Your experience in medical devices strategy, brand development, software, and technology-enabled CRM. Your industry knowledge and global perspective allows medical products and healthcare clients to move effectively and efficiently across every expanding landscape of patient care and consumer-directed healthcare. Now we're coming to Dovev. Dovev, you are founder, co-CEO, and CPO at myAir. You're a serial entrepreneur specializes in personalized technology and innovative B2C products. You led the creation of business units at large corporations, as well as co-founded AI personalized and media startup companies. You built the digital division of Israel's second largest TV broadcasters, the business development of the satellite company, as well as a personalization and video startups, including one 5x IPO. Last but not least, with you on the panel, we have Thomas. Thomas, you are a physical engineer and an experienced and passionate software solution engineer with a demonstrated history of working in the telecommunications industry, manufacturing, utilities, transport, and others. You're skilled in complex IT and OT enterprise environments, business process design, professional services, SaaS, in the cloud or on premise, and much more. Adrian, may I hand over to you? Oh, I'm so sorry, my dear Caroline. Now I have to admit, because I actually had your CV. Now, just give me a sec and I will just open it up. I'm so sorry. That was a copy-paste. I must say, because I know Caroline already, I thought, okay, I'll just do that. But now, once you have a shopping list with you, you will forget if you didn't write anything. So just bear with me.
That's fine. You can just say I'm awesome and we can move on.
Or can I just hand over to you quickly, Caroline, and you will tell us a little bit, because your vast experience is very relevant to that panel. I'm so sorry.
No, don't worry. Hi, everyone. I'm Carolina Pinard. I lead the use cases pillar in Nestlé as Global AI Strategy Program, and I also am the product director for new generation technologies, where my team scales up new technologies into the very vast landscape of IT of Nestlé, and most of these technologies are AI. Therefore, that's the reason I wear these two hats. And I've done a lot of things in tech. I got into AI recently compared to everybody else about the last 4 years, and before that I worked a lot on telecom systems and internet technologies, mobility, for a number of industries.
Thanks a lot, Carolina, and sorry again. Now,
don't worry, I know myself really well.
Oh, that's good. That's about human intelligence, isn't it? And I'm actually relying on the technology. So again, we see at the end of the day, we better rely on the human being. So Adrian, please take over.
Well, thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here with you today, and this morning for us, but it's not morning for you. May I Mexico, we're really honored to be part of this this panel, and especially moderating it. So I'd like to go ahead and give the floor to Mr. Bill. See if we can go with the first intervention.
Sure. I think one of the questions that was asked is health and safety are becoming increasingly important on the shop floor. And during these sensitive times, I think referring to COVID was asked, how do we see technology contributing to safer work environments? The background and work we're working with is with factories across the globe, obviously the US, Mexico, and South America, and then throughout Europe. Really, health and safety processes completely changed, as we know, with the pandemic struck the world. Those health and safety of workers was key to keeping the production lines going and retaining customer contracts. Companies that were left with two choices in technology basically was to either modify their health and safety or shut down. And many clients we know did shut down. The recommendations to prevent the spread of COVID changed daily too by governments. So companies were forced to change. How a company modified their technology and processes to create a safer work environment really contributed to the health and safety of the workers themselves. And our ability to take on AI, adapt technologies, new technologies, leveraging existing technologies that we had, image databases, analytics, and our medical experts brought about new outcomes for us and our clients. The use of AI, the analytics, and the automation immediately changed and provided real-time track and tracing for clients and customers. So that health and safety increasingly was important. The power to screen employees, workers for virus obviously is key to keeping the plant open. Screening them before they actually are exposed to other employees on the work floor. The use of technology contributed to the advancement of screening processes. So today, we know through our AI technology developments and other analytics, we've been able to go through and screen for pre-symptomatic conditions in individuals and workers that might be a risk in the workforce. Companies adopted that policy, moving away from a point thermometer, thermal cameras by themselves. The ability to reduce or even isolate COVID workers and pass them on to a medical expert to make the diagnosis and confirmation has been key. And I think that's key for a lot of companies. Providing simple AI with new technology solutions has allowed us and our clients really to pivot quickly and adapt to a solution to a new industry or other industries. No two clients or industries are the same, but they may be similar. With the added benefits of deep industry experts that we have, the rapidly generated insights and acceleration in decision-making processes, we've been able to be speed to actions, speed to solution for our clients. And the accelerated decision-making process has allowed our developers and technology partners to work with clients and medical experts to make modifications to the workforce environment. And, pardon me? Go ahead. Yeah, no problem. Actually, I was just going to say it's allowed the rapid health and safety guidelines across all industries to be modified. Adrian, did you have any other questions?
Yes. So what about the combination of AI and viral sign thermal cameras? Can you please extend on this?
Yeah. With respect to the use of technology in identifying disease in individuals and populations, it's been critical for technology to acknowledge and align disease processes. One example, infectious disease, there's a disconnect between legacy technologies and the disease process. So current standards of point thermometers and thermal cameras act independent of viral sign and are insufficient, as we've proven. The insights of legacy technologies provide forehead temperature, which is too late. By the time someone is exposed, everyone around them has the virus also. So viral sign is not dependent on a specific camera. Through our research and development in AI and other analytics, we've determined that cameras, we can adapt to any camera or any output. Creating this flexibility is key to the dependency and use of viral sign. So this provides our client with the flexibility to install a new station or hook up with maybe an existing thermal camera that they purchased during the pandemic. What I'd like to say, though, just as a follow-up, we rely on our algorithms and analytics to drive the screening process, and complementing legacy technologies, analytics, and existing hardware and mobility allows our clients to really quickly adjust to their workplace protocols and identify various pre-symptomatic conditions in employees and temporary workers.
Awesome. Okay, great. So now, Carolina, do you see cognitive technologies contributing how to food production?
Sure. I think they're contributing a lot. There's three things where we see an uptake on AI as we roll it out at a bigger scale in Nestlé. The first is they significantly increase throughput. The second one is they help us optimize the supply chain. And the third is they also help us accelerate research and development. Right? We are constantly coming up with what we call innovation and renovation. So tweaks to our products and then brand new products like plant-based meat, for example, right? And between 30 and 40% of our product portfolio at any given time actually comes from that innovation and renovation, right? That takes a massive effort. And we have the biggest R&D organization in the food industry. It also helps provide new business models and also new value-added services. So there's a trend in food customizing. Now Nestlé and companies like us, we're mass producers, right? How do you mass customize? That's something that AI can help do, and we're starting to pilot. And of course, I want to say that this will require not only the technology and the data, obviously, to power that, but also upskilling and in some cases reskilling people so they can work and leverage AI fully. So when we do AI, we work on the sort of technology and data, but also on the talent piece, and they go hand in hand, and all the process reengineering that goes with that.
And what about how does Nestlé use these technologies, and how would these technologies, especially AI, would foster processes?
Well, there are lots of use cases. Actually, as part of the program, we have a database where we are, gathering all the projects that we have. Right now, we have over 500 covering 50 different use cases and counting. Number one by far for us is machinery maintenance and quality. That's where kind of we started. As far as manufacturing goes, obviously we also have marketing and sales use cases, right? For like predictive maintenance, anomaly detection, where we have a lot of cameras in our production lines. to detect, like, when we do frozen pizzas, they have to have certain number of pepperoni slices and certain amount of cheese. So we started doing kind of automating anomaly detection many years ago, and now we're using AI. We also have autonomous vehicles in factories and automating a lot of, for example, the pallets, truck loading. I mean, there's lots of use cases, leveraging a lot of digital twins and AI to optimize the production, finding bottlenecks and optimizing that. We had to do very, very fast during the first lockdown due to COVID, because obviously we produce much less foods for businesses in more instant noodles, for example, than in frozen goods, because people were cooking more at home, right? And also in R&D, which is what comes before manufacturing, we've been also working on leveraging AI for consumer insights, for example, to generate insights to predict better what kind of foods will sell better because people will like them more. And also reducing the testing time for example, new flavors. That is very intensive in terms of testing. I'm not going to say that this is brute force, but it's close to that, right? So AI can help us find the paths that are worth pursuing, right?
Oh, wow, that's really interesting, because I would really enjoy that work, because you're right in between, right in the middle of food, and I used to automate pork. So anyway, Thomas, can you outline the current status of Industry 4.0 on the shop floors, looking back a decade or so?
Yes, thanks, Adrian, for letting me give the chance for a State of the Union, what we from a solution provider perspective have observed the last 10 years, the last decade. So actually, when we are talking now about smart manufacturing or Industry 4.0, we mean something different than what we have observed in the last 10 years. So actually, when a steel factory blast furnace is getting replaced with a Windows-based system, this is not digital productization necessarily. Actually becoming then probably the most neuralgic point of failure within the steel factory is a side effect here, which I've observed even. Or if the machinists, the operators on a shop floor, the people driving the operations, the productions, those equipments, are getting equipped with a tablet, that is not digital manufacturing either. When we are discussing about smart manufacturing, which enables artificial intelligence, we refer, despite the foreground digital productization of some products, to the background shadow digital productization, where we can see in real time what's going on in the shop floors, what is getting produced, are we on time, what about KPIs like overall equipment efficiency, and so forth. And this as part of a digital twin. This is still yet to come. We see that it is emerging, but we are not yet there yet. More question?
There you go. Thank you for that. Well, what are or have been the barriers when you roll out AI out there on the shop floor? Rolling out. Yeah.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, so actually we see three barriers. First is organization, second is infrastructure, and third is solutions. So with respect to the organization, there is Conway's law. You know that the operation technology, the shop floor environment, and the IT organization are different. And Conway's law means that actually it's from the 60s, that every organization, every enterprise is developing, implementing the systems according to the line of communications and the line of responsibilities. And that has been driven this, I would say, traditional barrier in between shop floor operational technology environments and the enterprise IT, the top floor environments. And these barriers are still existent and they need to break up. However, there have been still some even technical limitations in between these barriers, which have been improving or better improved in the past, which are infrastructure. Infrastructure, with respect to AI, we require massive data sets, to generate some real-time models that will allow predictive or preventative maintenance model, or that will allow anomaly detection. This has been lacking due to the lack of being fully connected. The chance of uploading teradata bytes per day from a semiconductor manufacturer into the data mart, that hasn't been given. But we see now a change here with respect to the telecommunications private 5G networks that are rolling out. Yeah, here with private 5G networks, the bandwidth can be upgraded even for remote factories up to multi-gigabit, allowing such kind of massive bandwidth data getting uploaded through the infrastructure. Second thing. And third thing is solutions. Yeah, you need to have the right solutions in place that can handle this massive parallel data set and streams in real time to be able to act upon, not only react, act upon, and probably control even what's going on the shop floors. And this is something that, for instance, KX is providing access to the massive data sets in real time, plus combining them with historian data. So these three things have been so far the barriers, but this is something, the outview, this is now the decade of the AI on the shop floors, because these three things will go away.
Awesome. Yeah. David, how are the consumer side and the food industry? How is that changing thanks to the benefits of artificial intelligence capabilities?
I think you wanted to get to know who are the drivers for AI, right? Yes, so actually the drivers for AI that let's really arrive it finally on the shop floors, yeah, are coming from these areas. Organization, we see here big service integrators, managed service providers who are actually identifying and seeing to extend their service catalog with edge integration, equipment integration, and anomaly detection, while the integration barrier and the solution barrier is closed. T-Systems, DXC Technologies, Accenture are right now extending their service catalog, which has been so far around IT service management. Yeah, so traditional fabric LAN, fabric WAN, compute storage, network services for edge integration and anomaly detection on the edge. Yeah, and this, you know, when you've got one responsible party only through an SLA servicing knows the whole environment, then these kind of new service and this barrier in between OT and IT staff is gone. Second thing, infrastructure, emerge of 5G MECs, multi-access edge computing nodes. Here, the infrastructure needs to have intelligent network routing. And this is another kind of artificial intelligence that let, according to the available bandwidth, drive the network traffic through the available bandwidth with a different kind of intelligence. And here is a second area for artificial intelligence on the shop floor, the right emerging software-defined network capabilities across virtual network functions. And third thing is solutions. You need to have the right solutions in place that can get access to these massive parallel data sets in parallel and combined with historian data in real time with patterns, models from the big data marts combined to receive artificial intelligence on the shop floors here. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate that. David, how are you? How the consumer side of the food industry is changing thanks to the benefits of artificial intelligence capabilities? What do you think?
Okay, so what we see is we see a different approach about the revolution that AI brings to the food world and to the food system. First of all, we see two major trends. One of them is the first one is the functional food. Within the past few years, we've seen the food industry transforming from healthier food into food that is has a purpose, that is good for me, either a protein-based bar nutrition, or a functional food that is more specific in stress management, like what you're specialized in, which helps people ease their stress. The other side is the personalized nutrition. Personalized nutrition is the ability of using data in order to build the right food that is good for me, or for you, or for each one of our viewers at the moment. This is actually the revolution that brings the capabilities of the computer power to the world of the food, where in a world where we can collect data that is relevant for each one of the customers, we can tailor the right mix, the right food dietary offering to each one of our customers. We at myAir, for instance, we collect data that is coming from cognitive assessment, the psychological part of the way that the consumer is feeling and behaving, and physiological data that we collect through wearable devices like from Garmin wearables, or that we have a strategic partnership with, or with Apple Watch, Fitbit, and so on. The combination of this data, the combination of this physiological data that is continuous and allows us to track the physiological state of the customer in each and every one of in every minute of the customer's life, and on the other hand, collect the psychological side in order to provide them with a personalized offering that is relevant for them, enables us to provide a personalized solution per customer. Now, why is that such a revolutionary thing for the food industry? Because up until now, most of the food manufacturers, and I think Carolina mentioned it a little bit earlier, as at Nestlé, for instance, as a mass manufacturer, one of the largest ones in the world, obviously. The ability to collect data and to be engaged with each one of the customers on a one-on-one basis, and to talk with each one of the customers based on their own personalized reaction, and to tailor the right mix, the right offering to each one of the customers, is something that is unique, and that we haven't seen that anywhere before that in the food industry. This revolution enables us as a platform provide offering to food manufacturers, having the engagement to collect the data, the AI data that we collect through our platform, through the wearable devices, combine that with psychological data that is collected, the engagement of the customer, and thanks to that, to tailor the right offering to each one of the customers with a variety of functional food that is produced by the mass manufacturer.
Awesome, great. Okay, thanks so much. Appreciate that. Where do we go now? Do we go with Delius now, or do we take another question from Douglas?
Thanks a lot. We do have some other questions coming out also from the audience. And I would like to start with you, Carolina. Thinking of Nestlé is a huge company. Apart from the manufacturing productions, where are cognitive technologies focused the most?
Clearly supply chain, and also marketing and sales. I would say like manufacturing, supply chain, marketing and sales are the top three. And that's about kind of 90% of the value we're getting right now. And then we also have the R&D piece. So in accelerating and kind of getting better at capturing insights for new products.
Thanks. Going to you, Barry, where do you see these? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'll answer for Barry. In the cognitive area, we're definitely seeing that in the engagement with patient care and the use of medical backgrounds on individuals, but then also in the screening process with our analytics and what we're pulling out.
Thanks, Dovev. Perhaps you can give us some insights from your industry.
Absolutely. So what we see on our side is we see that our partners, food manufacturers, are seeing a shift in the way that they manage their data. Up until today, I believe that you are all aware of the change that Google, Apple, and Facebook are now applying with the ceasing of using of cookies that enable them to track and to build all their marketing efforts in order to engage and to target all their marketing activities. And they see that now that any publisher around the world, any advertiser around the world will no longer be able to target their audience using cookies. They will need to have a direct engagement with their customers. So what could be more beneficial for the customer to be engaged with their customers than having a personalized nutrition offered them by their major brands? This is why we see that many of our partners or customers are actually using our system and our engagement system that enables us to track and to provide them with valuable added value for the engagement with each one of their customers. And we see that now more and more manufacturers and brands are now seeking for the next stage, having seen that the older ways of advertising and engagement with their customers are going to be stopped, and they need to have a more deeper engagement system like the AI-based engagement that we provide.
Thanks. I would actually like to go back quickly to you, Carolina, thinking of what Dovev just said, and especially about how do we get this into the shops. I mean, from Nestlé's perspective, you are so big, you have so different parts that you're working on. How much is actually the work together with your customers? How do you engage on the topic of AI with your customers, supporting them on their side?
We do that especially in the R&D side. So when we create new products and engaging them from the insides to, obviously we do all the tastings with them, and then specifically on the marketing and sales beat as well. Now we are kind of merging a little bit more than manufacturing and supply chain, as we are starting to pilot more personalized products. For example, like instead of buying your cereal boxes, you can order a mix of it's sort of a set of pre-made mixes, and then you can say, I want this, I don't want that, right? So it's not like you can hyper personalize yet, but there's a lot of combinations available, and that's our first attempt to engage customers as well in the manufacturing and supply chain process. But primarily is on the R&D when we come up with new products and we renovate products, and the last mile, right? When we engage sort of direct to consumer.
Thanks a lot. Bill, sorry for last time. No. Saying the right, I mean, somehow today is like a strange day, obviously, but we will manage. At least this shows how human we all are, aren't we? Me too, I'm not an avatar. The combination of AI and viral signs, thermal cameras, can you please explain a little bit more? Because I think everything around what you're doing is having a huge influence on this topic.
Yeah, I think, first we took the approach of vetting out the cameras, working with our thermal experts and our medical experts. So our ability to adapt rapidly to any camera is completely effective. We have the ability, we're really not relying on the cameras themselves as much as we're using our algorithms and the viral sign system to make the analysis and the screening process of individuals, and rely on the medical experts to make the diagnoses. But we have that ability to move not only beyond COVID, but into other ailments and conditions for workforce people globally. So we find a lot of clients engaging us in conversations, asking, can you help us with this and can you help us with that? And that's really where the AI and the analytics come in, and sitting down on how we can adapt to their software and their conditions in their work environments.
So again, and a nice example, how we see how actually technology engages with the human being. We said before that it's like, sorry, AI helps reducing test time at Nestlé. We've heard about optimizing supply chain and manufacturing, especially also in R&D. Thomas, from your side, thinking also the part of the R&D, what are the drivers where you see that AI really arrives to support the shop floors?
Yeah, so first of all, anomaly detection. So here with the edge integration, equipment integration in real time, you know, it's going into the vision to operate without staff, yeah, to remote control and operate. And therefore we need to identify fail fast before some outage happens with major impact, yeah. Second thing, predictive maintenance. So just to foresee potential maintenance on certain equipments, which comes now with the integration capabilities and the solution around that identify potential trends in an equipment driving in a wrong situation and state. And the next stage, the third thing is preventative maintenance, yeah. To avoid maintenance to happen at all with an early detection that lets avoid that the malfunction will occur. 1, 2, 3.
Thanks. Now, Adrian, you have a vast experience with a lot of companies. And actually, my question to you, you see cross-industry, so many companies dealing with AI, and especially what I've read about this, you is to adopt AI with the goal of triggering growth. Could you please bring us 1 or 2 examples out of your community and your experience having the last minute?
Sure. Well, you know, my experience has been in many fields like defense and port automation for companies like ABB, where I brought AI to the port and services business unit in San Diego, and we were able to take people out of dangerous jobs into air conditioned floors where they can just monitor the machines, right? So that's allowing ships to be able to be loaded faster with no stop, and merchandise to get shipped around the world faster and safer. In Mexico, we started a community, and it exploded from 30 people in June 2019 to more than 600 people in many companies around the world, in actually 10 countries. And we're trying to actually have manufacturing become a competitive in this new age of AI by fast tracking safe AI into our industry to create a competitive national industry and create growth that way.
Thanks a lot. Great. I actually just got another question out of the audience. Somehow they warming up. So Carolina, this is for you, and time is running. So, but still, I would like to bring it up. How does AI accelerate product development at Nestlé? Are there any tangible examples?
I would say like the testing time reduction is a key one, because usually, especially when you go to the flavor or molecular level, you have lots of combinations, a little bit like the pharma industry. You need to try a lot of things, right, to get the right one. And if you can predict the odds of something working much better, then you save a lot of time, right? So I would say that one, and we're just getting started with the consumer insights. That's very, very promising too.
Thanks a lot. Thanks to all of you for your insights and the discussion. Thanks for the audience for the questions. Now, Adrian, Barry, Bill, Doviv, and Thomas, hope to see you soon again. We have such a diverse audience with us, so I can only imagine how much they can benefit from all your inputs cross-industry. Now it's time to deep dive in JT Clark's keynote, sharing his and BCG Gamma's vast experience in the primary and secondary industry sector. JT, you are managing director and partner in BCG's Calgary office. You focus on advanced analytics application in operations, primarily mining and oil and gas, and leads BCG's Gamma practice in process industries. JT, the stage is yours.
Thank you. And it's great to be with everybody today, share a little bit on BCG's views on the application of AI. And today we'll talk a little bit more specifically about mining, though those things that we're sharing today truly apply in any process or material focused industry. So hopefully you can see my screen. There we go. So what we'll share maybe a bit of context on the application of AI in mining first. For a long time, mining, oil and gas, other primary industries were considered a little bit sleepy when it came to AI. And as banks and telcos and consumer-facing companies quickly embraced data, asset-based companies tended to lag behind. That has shifting substantially as we've seen massive and increased investment in AI and data science across mining and other asset-centric industries. And along with this, we've also seen a rapidly evolving capability. So even now, the solutions deployed 2 years ago simply have evolved, and much better solutions are in place today. So along with this, we've seen the industry progress up an S-curve and increasing the value capture with industry-specific AI. And despite this recent increase and this great trajectory, there's still substantially more room to go. We continue to need to raise the bar. We need to pivot from our current place, which has been much more around independent use cases, to delivering integrated suites of AI-driven capability, often referred to as AI-driven integrated operations. Additionally, we do see there's a very real limitation or ceiling on the potential for value capture with our clients until we're able to actually bring together the AI capability along with engineering expertise, operations, and management decision-making. So as long as AI has been treated as an interesting, shiny object, it will be limited in how much value it can deliver. As we bring this together, we see substantial unlocks and changes not just in how we make decisions, but really how we run these operations altogether. So as we talk a little bit about this today, I'll share from some examples, share some use cases that we've seen, but also the application of AI more broadly in a mining environment, and hope to illustrate really what this means and what we're seeing in mining. To do that, I have to figure out how to advance my screen. There we go. So a little bit more on the context. We really see 5 different phases of maturity in AI in mining. The first stage has been about visualization. This is where many people start. This is the initial foray into data science, understanding that there's a broad availability of data that hasn't yet been touched, and bringing that to operators, to management, to be able to make decisions. As management teams became more comfortable with the data that's available, they then switched to pursuing specific use cases. And this was usually a targeted high-value use case that had some sort of application of a traditional AI solution. So we're able to pull from another industry, apply that AI, and pursue a use case. And these were, often well-received, but independent, shiny objects, not really an integrated solution. The next step was actually then to take those same use cases, and instead of doing one-off analyses or periodic analyses, now bring them to a real-time AI integrated with operations. So in this case, you're actually integrating the AI solution, the algo, with the process controls, with the asset itself and the operations, reacting to the environment in real time and enabling or making decisions for the operations. As this continues to expand and as we climb up that S-curve of value capture, so the y-axis on this being how much value is captured, we then get to AI-driven integrated operations. And what that means is now we're moving from individual use cases to an integrated suite of use cases that's not only being used real time to optimize now, but is also being used to better understand future operations, the impact of incoming or future ore conditions, the mining plan, the sequence of mining, to enable management to anticipate and make better operational decisions, resourcing levels or other mining specific decisions, to be in front of challenges before they happen. Now, ultimately, we do see this getting to closed loop AI operations. We do expect the value to level off as we get there, because now we're talking about simply the incremental value from either increased frequency or increased accuracy of decisions. But we're moving along this curve. Many people started at visualization. The most advanced minds now have moved all the way through to AI-driven integrated operations. So we'll move forward, and I'll share an example of what this looks like in real life. So the example here is from a mine that had a first quartile performer. So important here, this was not about identifying a laggard and improving a laggard, but rather taking somebody who is at the top of their game and making them better. We started out focused on one part of the mining process called flotation, and this is where you take the ore and you combine it with water and chemicals to be able to dissolve and extract the mineral you're targeting, and actually recover that mineral from the ore. And this is probably the most complex process, but it's also only where we started. From there, we're able to move across the entire mining value chain, drive a suite of solutions together with the client, ultimately driving 10% increase in throughput and 5% increase in recovery. And well, 15%, I think generally any sort of improvement of 15% sounds great. To be candid, had we achieved a 2 or 3% improvement, that would have been considered a resounding success. So really, to get to an incremental 15% on an already highly performing asset is considered really truly outstanding and unexpectedly good performance. By also doing a suite of solutions, this has created for them a platform for AI-driven integrated operations. So to click into this one more level of detail, we'll share a little bit more about what we did. So here we have across the top of this page a very simple articulation of a mining value chain, from drilling and blasting, which is breaking up the rocks, to loading them into trucks, crushing them, putting them in stockpiles, grinding them, which turns those rocks into a finer powder, the flotation, which I mentioned, and then managing both the high grading of the concentrates, managing byproducts and water. And as you can see, we started out here on flotation and grinding optimization. We moved our way down through into blending to get the right type of ore into the right stockpile for the right piece of equipment in the grinding circuit. We carried that all the way through into the crushers. As we were doing that, we found that there was often data that existed that we didn't have access to at the right point in the value chain. So for example, every mine has a model that tells you what type of ore you expect to have at any given time, what exactly you're mining. And you can track that ore by truckload, by shovel load, but the moment that ore hits a stockpile, the data becomes as jumbled as the ore does when you drop it in a stockpile, and a stockpile simply being effectively a big pile of ore that you pull from. So in this case, what we did is we ran 20,000 RFID tags through their entire system to be able to then create models of how the ore would flow through the stockpiles, how it would be extracted and mixed and blended into different grinding circuits, now enabling us to connect the block model, or the model that tells us about the mineralogy of the mine, all the way through to the flotation, bringing in new types of information and new data that we could then use to be able to further optimize the flotation or the grinding circuits. This not only got us new data, but doing this allowed us to run this equipment with real-time optimization and integrate the AI directly into the process controls. So this process controls being the system that actually is used to optimize the plant. We're using AI to inform that on how it should operate, and doing this on a real-time basis. And this was an important unlock to enable the frontline operators to really be able to extract the most out of the facility. And as you can see from this page, we've really done this on a number of different pieces of the value chain, incorporating different AI capability at each step along the way, using dynamic simulation to be able to look forward into the future, using ML to be able to predict performance, optimization to find the right set points. We really had to bring together the full suite of data science capability to be able to deliver this integrated solution. I think one point that I would be remiss if I did not highlight as part of this presentation is the difference and evolution in AI that we had to deploy to be able to make this work. So traditionally, and we would all be familiar with these, traditionally we might follow a black box approach, and a black box being acceptable if we can give the right outputs or inputs and get the right outputs. You know, a neural net, a random forest, any of these will help us understand the relationships and the data outcomes. However, when we get into an engineering environment, in a real-time operating environment, we find the need to actually follow a Bayesian approach, and that is to directly integrate our data science models with the engineering or physics-based models that the plant has used historically to operate. This way, not only do our models understand basic physical principles, conservation of mass, or other physics-based rules that the engineering teams rely on, it allows us to get into the model a little deeper and create causal models. So instead of having a black box, we're able to understand at every step of the decision making how and why the AI is making the decisions that it is making. Importantly, this helps us manage some of the challenges with data availability. So in an operating environment, when you're providing real-time recommendations for set points, you cannot be constrained by the availability of historical data. And as we all know, data come in a traditional bell curve. Using a black box model, you could only provide, a solid recommendation maybe on one standard deviation. So call it 65, 70% of the time. We need to be able to provide recommendations at 95% plus. So by using a Bayesian approach, by integrating both the physical models or the first principles models, we're able to then provide recommendations across the full spectrum of operating conditions. This allows us now to better understand all of the assets at a very granular detail, and in fact, understand them often in ways that weren't previously understood. By doing this, we get much more accurate forecasts, and we're able to now bring AI into the integrated operations of the facility, integrating the plans around maintenance sequencing, mine planning, market access or market trading, and be able to make decisions around the mine plan and the operations that take advantage of the future situations. We say this typically is most effectively done in 4 to 6 weeks out, but can be applied all the way out into life of mine style planning, so looking at the 10, 20, 30-year horizons. By using these increased accuracy of the forecasts and order of magnitude, we're finding that these forecasts are more accurate by about 10x. We're able to then make very specific decisions around work resourcing, how many trucks, when to do maintenance. And this has been an important part of creating that 15% uplift that we've been able to achieve. So with that, I've reached the end of the presentation. Hopefully this has helped you understand a little bit more about how we see AI being directly driven and integrated into the core of our operating facilities at some of our most foundational industries around the world. Thank you for your time today.
We have to thank, it's been great listening to you, JT. Very insightful. May I ask you some questions from the audience? We have one.
Of course.
Thank you. How do you gather data in the oil field or mining, given the heavy physical barriers and operating limits, such as pressure or temperature?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Many of our clients have extensive operational technology, or OT, and IT systems in place. And so our starting point is to leverage the existing data systems, and we will often leverage their platforms and pull data directly from sensors or from their databases from their operating technology platforms.
Thank you. Another one. Have you managed to combine Bayesian inferences and machine learning?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and this has been an important unlock, really an unlock in the last, call it 2 years, that has enabled us to get beyond just an AI or a machine learning only approach. So these leveraging this Bayesian approach and this direct integration with physics models is both difficult but critical, and requires a lot of effort from both the engineering teams as well as the data science teams.
Thank you. Now, you have a lot of different industries that you can look into it, especially in the primary and secondary sector. Which one do you see has the highest maturity in the application and development of AI, applied AI?
That's a great question, also a very difficult one to answer. And I would say the maturity of an industry, if I would say we see a lot of progress in oil and gas and mining. The challenge here is there's a wide disparity between the leaders and the laggards. And in many of these industries, and in many primary industries, we see the laggards not embracing AI at all yet, really relying only on traditional operating approaches, while the leaders are bringing AI into every part of their business that they can. And so I think hard to measure the industry as a whole, other than to say there's a very wide range within the industry. But if we were to measure the leaders, we see the leaders in mining and oil and gas really coming to the forefront.
Thanks a lot. We still have questions. I think we all could continue for hours listening to you. Thanks a lot, JT, for your contribution and time. And I really hope to have you soon with us on stage again. It was very insightful. Thanks. Thank you. Success factors for AI in a product-driven environment. Now we're heading to the next panel with Tom Allen as a moderator. Tom, you will chair this session with your panelists Chuck, Hedwig, Christian, and Stuart. Tom, yourself, you are the founder of the AI Journal and one of our SwissCognitive ambassadors, and have interviewed already quite some of our great global AI thought leaders. Now, Chuck, you are on the panel. You are the president of Brooks Consulting International, a globally recognized thought leader for cybersecurity and emerging technology. LinkedIn named you as one of the top 5 tech experts to follow on LinkedIn. So please follow him. You are a 2-time presidential appointee who were an original member of the Department of the Homeland Security. You are on the faculty of Georgtown University, where you teach in the Graduate Applied Intelligence and Cybersecurity programs. You are also a cybersecurity expert for the network at the Washington Post and an emerging tech contributor to Forbes. With you on the panel, we have Hedwig. You are a professor in the Division of Robotics, Perception and Learning at the KTH, and lead AI scientist at Silo AI. Today is like my tongue not following my brain, sorry. At Silo AI, an affiliated researcher in the Perceiving System Department, Max Planck's Institute for Intelligent Systems in Tübingen, Germany. You do research in computer visioning and machine learning. The general theme of your research are methods for enabling artificial agents to interpret the behavior of humans and other animals, and also to behave in ways interpretable to humans. These ideas are applied in performing arts, healthcare, veterinary science, and smart society. In your free time, you play the classical double bass or spend time with family outdoors, skiing or hiking. Together with you, we do have Christian on the panel. Christian, you belong to the top 100 global leader in AI, are passionate about AI since the early days and did a PhD in AI and psychology. What a great combination. Today, you are the VP, Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer at TietoEVRY and Executive Director at the Nordic Artificial Intelligence Institute. You built company strategies and designed and implemented hundreds of AI successful products. Then we do have Stuart with us on the panel. Stuart, you are CEO of OmniQuest, a leading design, exploration, analysis, and optimization software provider to automotive OEMs. You are a dynamic technology executive driving new products and market development, computer-aided design and manufacturing, machine-to-machine IoT, supply chain management, auto ID, and wireless technology. Starting from blue chips, including IBM, Intel, Qualcomm, and Trimble Navigation, through multiple startups, you led development initiatives serving industry like manufacturing, construction, distribution, transportation and logistics, wholesale and retail consumer packaged goods, along with finance, industries, healthcare, and multiple energy film. Tom, you have a very strong panel with you. Please get started.
Yeah, and I just want to give a quick thank you before we do start to Dalif, Andy, Livia, and all the audience that are joining us today. It's a real pleasure to be in front of such amazing people and gives you some real experience and real insights. So I want us to get right into it and kick us off. And Hedvig, I'd love to start with you. So there's a lot of focus on AI recently, and it'd be good to understand what is AI and what is the difference to other computing technology and ICT in general.
Yes, so I think the special thing with AI systems is that they do things on their own, so they are sort of encapsulated and are able to take in information and process that information in some way to sort of think about it and draw some conclusions from it and make plans or decisions and possibly take actions. So, for example, an autonomous car might look at the scene around it and make judgments whether it should wait or if it should drive and turn and so on. And the difference to other types of ICT applications is that they are not able to do anything without the help in every step by a human. For example, a word processor can only sort of display the keys that you type. So I would say that that is the definition of an AI system. Let's see if the other panel members disagree.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll have a bit of discussion around that on what it is to each different people. I know from my background, looking at AI Journal, I get new definitions every day. So it's really exciting to see how it applies to different areas. Mm-hmm. And that kind of brings me to it. Stuart, I really wanted to look at, and I've been seeing what you're doing at OmniQuest. And for the audience to know, I'm particularly interested to hear about the answer to this question, because it's a new way of looking at how AI can be applied. So Stuart, can you give us an overview of your computer-aided engineering design optimization and how it's considered to be AI, please?
Happy to. Happy to be here as well. I've been my pick on this rock of teaching machines to teach themselves and teach other machines, or computers programming other computers, for 38 years now. The very first application was in a computer-aided design, a synthesis of a helical spur gear back in the late 1980s that fed from customer requirements to automated design of the production of the design of the model, and then pushed that out to have a computer numerical controlled machine, a CNC machine, fabricated. And what we did, we thought was really fantastic. However, what we didn't do was we didn't analyze whether or not what it was that we were producing met the requirements. And so over the past 30 odd years or so, I've been looking for where is the science, the management science, and the engineering algorithms that can be applied to ensure that when we try to transform our world into these different creations to serve humanity, that the design that the computer enables you to perfect meets the requirements and is not over-engineered, and thereby putting too much material into a certain product. And fortunately, I was blessed to cross paths with Dr. Gerrit van der Plaats, the founder of OmniQuest. The company has been privately held, operating for 36 years, beginning from NASA all the way through to today's Formula One racing teams, where the science, the management science, is applied to break a objective, a design, down into millions of variables and determine from those what the values of those millions of variables need to be in order to determine the design that meets an objective with a set of boundary conditions. I'll give everybody an example that may fit closer to home on how computer-aided design optimization applies. I think we're all familiar with Photoshop and how you can correct photos to remove backgrounds and put different imagery in place with someone who's being filmed, such as what I've done. The camera and the computer that are picking up the background and substituting a different background is determining which one of these tiny little picture elements needs to be removed or which needs to stay. So the same concept applies in computer-aided design optimization, where I have an object and I dice that up into millions and millions of finite elements. And then instead of determining whether or not the color is appropriate or the size is appropriate for it to be replaced or included, you also have to include attributes, characteristics such as what type of material, the geometric size of it, the geometric shape, the angles, how it is adjusted to the corresponding finite elements. And then if you imagine that you take any part, and it can be, a steering wheel, it can be a brake for a car, it can be a brake shoe, it can be a strut, it can be an airfoil for an aircraft, and you determine which of these elements need to stay and which need to go, and what characteristics do they need to be in order to achieve the outcome that the designer envisions. That, to me, is the most purest implementation of artificial intelligence, where I'm actually aiding a design engineer to achieve the absolute very best that they can do.
Yeah. And I think it's a really interesting point you make, Stuart, especially on the point, I look at it from a view of when companies implement big digital transformation projects, almost looking at too much instead of knowing what they actually need. So it's very interesting to hear you say about being specific about it, and dependent on the industry as well, for companies that need to use AI for different viewpoints, for different projects, different regions. And Christian, I'd love to come to you with this question, because I know you're doing amazing projects with TietoEVRY, and it would be great to get your viewpoints on which industries do you see benefiting from AI the most already, and is there any particular reason why?
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for the question, and great to be here. Great panel. Thanks for the invitation. Okay, look, I mean, clearly the internet consumer industry has benefited, and they have succeeded big time, right? So we look at the big players, the hyperscalers in the US that we all know. They are using AI, and a big part of their valuation is based on the way they use data and how they have become AI first companies. You look at Google, Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, many of the American companies, and you can look over to China. It's Baidu, Alibaba, etc. I mean, these are now trillion-dollar companies, and a big part of their success is that they have been able to use data in a very efficient way, and they have been also attracting the best talent in the world in order to really build these types of technologies in the value. So it's clearly the B2C market. It's clearly the consumer market, and it's all happening on the internet. So that's certainly one. That's also one of the reasons why here in Europe we have very little going at the moment. And if you ask me, okay, what's the second category of industries that are benefiting or we see an impact? Then of course you look at the B2B industry and the B2G industries, and the areas that become very important there is, of course, the energy market, for example, and transport logistics. So even the European car manufacturers are starting to look at things like self-driving cars, sustainable driving, the retail industry, transport logistics, where you clearly see how, for example, the post offices of many of the of the countries are able to offer better solutions here. So I think we will see a lot in these types of markets and in these B2B markets, but that's certainly something that takes a longer time, and why? Well, one of the reasons is it becomes very attractive. Building a product which a consumer can hold in the hand, like an Apple iPhone, and you open it with your face, using face recognition, which is essentially deep learning technology. It's really cool. It's immediate, and people can see it, can use it. It has a big impact. And in the B2B industry, you have core products which have been built over decades, maybe over a long period of time, and bringing this new technology into these new industries just takes a bit longer, and also it's harder to attract the talent, the real genuine talent into these industries. But that's maybe a short response to start off. Thanks, Thomas, for the question.
Thanks, Christian. And I think it's a really good point you made as well, because you've obviously looked at all the different industries using it. The post office one, I think, is great. You're dealing with lots of big public data. You're dealing with massive records and dealing with lots of way in the B2B aspect of data that people don't necessarily want to give away. So I think it's a good way to come to you, Chuck. And I would love to build off the great points Christian made and look at how AI, as amazing it is, and all the points Christian just made, how can it be applied for safety as well as excellence? So how can it be applied and productized in cybersecurity?
Well, thank you. It's also great to be on this excellent panel, very insightful, and I'm learning myself. You're right. Cybersecurity is really, out of necessity, one of the first areas that artificial intelligence, machine learning are actually being tested and implemented. And that's because we've all grown to be dependent on the internet, particularly in the last year with remote work. And particularly through commercial enterprises, a lot of the digital transactions and commerce. What has happened then is that the adversaries and the hackers and everyone out there have been taking advantage of this larger attack surface, and they've been targeting through automated phishing attacks and through other things, finding vulnerabilities and exploiting companies at a greater rate, particularly in healthcare, with ransomware attacks, etc. And so where artificial intelligence and machine learning fit in is it's really two ways. One, for the defender, it opens up a whole new avenue of opportunity to synthesize and correlate data It also allows for automated threat detection, which is really an integral part of cybersecurity because there's such a dearth of qualified practitioners in cybersecurity, and governments and companies and don't have the resources. So it fills a gap there too. And speaking of gaps, it identifies gaps. One of the things you could do is you could see where your weaknesses are. You could do a risk management profile, and you can even do breach prediction. And finally, I think where the biggest area might be was this incident response. So once something does happen, you're able to take the artificial intelligence correlations and use them to improve your resilience. And so I think this is a great question. And I think with 90%, I think it was the latest poll showed that artificial intelligence will be used in attacks against businesses in the next few years. And I think that's the other side of the coin, is we have to be wary that the adversaries are using it too. So that's all a matter for us to understand how we use it defensively and how we are better prepare ourselves for other challenges related to this technology.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it, when you hear of the percentages you just listed, Chuck, and how big it's getting when I keep seeing cybersecurity market growing through Know Your Customer, all these areas that are so core and so big to making the benefits show. So I think it's really interesting. And I'm, for one, for the audience to know and for everyone here, I'm very bullish on cybersecurity companies being the future of tomorrow. So Stuart, I want to come back to you again, and I want to switch gears slightly, and I want to get a view from what you and the team are doing at OmniQuest. So automotive companies and Formula One race teams have been using OmniQuest design optimization for years, and looking at what Chuck and Christian have touched on so far, how can this apply across industries, and what can it do to get away from or build on the automotive and Formula One race teams?
The nice thing about computer-aided design, engineering design optimization, is it applies to the assembly of any part and also the process. So any product and then any process, you start to introduce optimization of process when you introduce boundary conditions of time, mutual exclusivity, sequence. Historically, humanity has kept these fields of engineering design and process design separate. You have operations research and industrial engineering and operations research. Then you have computer-aided design and engineering in the engineering fields. And normally time is unbounded or infinite in those two fields. So we cross over between the two of those and be able to optimize product and process. The short answer on across all industries is, humanity molds nature to serve our ends, and how much molding of what type of what molecules is what optimization helps you determine. And so you can take any part, anything that humanity has created out there, and you can revisit it and say, can this be designed and produced better? And so any industry can capitalize on the optimization engines that automotive industries are taking advantage of and have been for years. So I hope that's a...
Yeah, it's really awesome, Stuart, and I'm learning a lot on this kind of way, because as you mentioned, what it flags to me is AI systems and making sure it works and it's operational and it's efficient. And I think that's a really good point to come on to you, Hedvig, and look at following on this as AI systems, its capabilities, the benefits they need for it to function properly and to do all the amazing things it does for us. I'd love to get some examples from you, please, of AI systems in the world around us and what's necessary to make AI systems function in the real world of today and tomorrow.
Yeah, so I should be a bit more precise about what real world means. Of course, all the AI systems we have discussed are real world, but I'm interested in systems deployed in physical embodiments. So, for example, processing in glasses, so wearable cameras that you have on your glasses. So then, so perception is really, really important. And so my interest is in computer vision. So AI is, of course, so computer vision is a field in AI. And I think it's really important to look closer at the pre-processing step before you apply the data to a neural network and train a neural network with it. You can benefit a lot from pre-processing the data and using all the knowledge about how a visual signal is produced. So extracting objects, segmenting the image, and so on. And another thing is computing power. So when you deploy a system in the wild, in real time, in a mobile agent, you have to be really, really careful how you train your architecture so that you can run it on really limited processing power. And so I think it's really important to look into that. I mean, if you have a banking application, for example, you probably have access to a really large server where you can process the data. So that's an interesting field.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that, Hedvig, because quantum computing is a thing I'm looking at constantly, and it comes back to what Chuck touched on, knowing your customer and the security and the cybersecurity aspect, because everything's just becoming so much quicker. So everything just needs to keep up pace. And like you said, it's really important to know your processes and know whatever sector it is you're looking at, how it works and how it can work efficiently. So Christian, I'd love to come to you, and as Hedvig's very kindly highlighted and given each of us in the audience great insight, I'd love to know the challenges. There's going to be challenges that come with this now, tomorrow, 5 years from now. So a few are trust, leadership, ethics, talent, culture, the list could go on. And I'd love to know, Christian, what do you consider a universal challenge across industries, and how do you see organizations tackling these challenges?
Yeah. So when you look at all the concepts that you mentioned, trust, culture, ethics, etc., what they all have in common is talent. It's people, right? So from my perspective, clearly the number one challenge that all industries have in common, that the entire ecosystem has in common, is talent, genuine and authentic talent. And on several levels, like talent, if you just consider two levels, which I consider being very, very critical and very important, it's the leadership level. It's when you are putting individuals in leadership positions as a CAIO, board members of organizations, small and big, whether it's a startup or it's already a 50-year-old or 100-year-old company. It's absolutely critical to have in the leadership people that understand the technology, that do have a clear understanding of what the technology can do for the company, for the people, for the ecosystem. The old company is absolutely and the leadership that understand the technology. I hear myself. Is that me? A clear understanding of what the technology. Someone might have their microphone on, but I would. The old company is absolutely and the leadership. Is it just me and myself, or is it myself? Is that me? A clear understanding of what the technology. Someone might have their microphone. Company is absolutely and the leadership. Is it just me and myself, or is it myself? Okay. I'm not sure. It's not clear. I don't know. I just continue speaking. With a bit of luck, we can filter it out. Okay. I'm not sure. It's not clear. I don't know. I just continue speaking. With a bit of luck, we can filter it out. Okay. I'm not sure. It sounds like a Twilight episode now. I don't know. I don't have any big maker or so on. I think I don't know if anyone else has, but I will just continue. So the first layer is the leaders, the talent, right, and the people. Very important. Having technology, knowledge. So really having a PhD in AI and related areas today absolutely essential in my opinion. And then you look at the operational layer. So when you start applying AI and implementing AI, you need top talent. And this is how the companies that are today succeeding greatly, which I mentioned before, in the B2C sector, in the internet consumer sector, they have top talent in the thousands. They have been essentially been able to attract top talent from Europe, from Asia, from the rest of the world. And they have, I know myself, I have many colleagues with whom I did my PhD with a long time ago. Many are now in Austin, in Silicon Valley, in Seattle, at the known companies that we all know. Some of them moved to Shenzhen and Singapore, right? So there is indeed, this is absolutely critical. It will enable all the things that you mentioned before: ethics, trust, culture, and also the technology, the products. So I would say both leadership, and we are not in a mature market. It's absolutely critical. When you look back at the companies that were successful in the past, they all started with people that understood the technology and the product. So whether it's a Siemens or Google, right? I mean, if you look at the Google founders, they published papers and then they said, oh, well, it's not an academic career, I built Google, right? And so it turned out to be a huge organization. So these people knew what the technology does. And now I use probably half of my time for some repeated looping here, but I leave it there, and we probably have another chance to reflect on this stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that was very well covered, Christian, and very insightful points, especially what you mentioned towards the end on Google and all these companies coming out with all these articles, frameworks, memorandums, you could almost call them, on how to do things the right way. So really do appreciate you sharing that. It's a big learning curve for me. So I want to swap over and look quickly. Chuck, this is a bit of a moment for me. I've noticed you wrote an article on technology fusion in Forbes, and Christian highlighted the challenges. This seems to me something, depending on the company, that is important to consider. So can you please explain what tech fusion is and how does it apply to AI?
Sure. Actually, I came across the idea. I was asked to create a course at Georgtown on disruptive technologies and organizational management. When I was putting together the syllabus and the modules, and exploring, doing deep dives into all these technologies, I found that, one of the interesting aspects is that they're all enablers and they all can work together. So I came up with the idea. It's not necessarily a unique idea. It's been talked about before, but the fusion of technologies is really where the future is, how you integrate them with each other. And looking with artificial intelligence, you can see so many applications pretty much for every technology. I mean, you can integrate artificial intelligence applications with 5G, with the Internet of Things and all its sensors. You can use it with robotics, and they already are, to create sense of sense. So there's really no limitations. And if you go across all the industries where this may be applied, whether it be healthcare research and finance, energy, transportation, and even security, you'll see that the sort of the molding of these technologies and their different forms and the interaction between them is creating new opportunities and new applications for these technologies. And I think that's also where artificial intelligence really plays a sort of a core role in all of them, because it really is organizing and improving the quality of data that all these other technologies are utilizing to perform. And so that's also verified. I recently just did a poll on my LinkedIn, and so for 110,000 responses in 2 days of which technologies will enable the most impact in the next 5 years. And I listed artificial intelligence, 5G, Internet of Things, quantum computing, and by more than 53%, respondents have said that it's artificial intelligence. And I think that is because artificial intelligence is really the connectivity to a lot of these applications. And I see that as really an important aspect of how we go forward in shaping products for artificial intelligence.
Yeah, really fascinating. You see all the you see all the different aspects come in, and I think we're going to jump to Q&A. But when you look at things like 5G, IoT, all combining to just infuse AI, I really love the idea of this technology fusion, and I'll definitely be reading up on it, Chuck. So I want to I think we've got a minute or two left, minus the technical difficulties, which we bounded off very quickly. And maybe a 20-second answer, very short answer to each of you. What is it what do you consider as a number one success factor for AI in the product-driven environment? What's the number one thing to each of you? And maybe we can start with Chuck, then go to Hedvig, then Christian, then Stuart.
Yeah, I'm sort of going to apply my cybersecurity theorem to this. I think the number one success factor is that you have to have a strategy and framework to implement it. You have to know what resources you need to allocate, what your challenges and risks out there, and what your market is. And then you can begin working on your product. So I think it all starts with a really general strategy risk management framework.
And then to Hedvig.
What? Yes, I think people are really important. So I think knowledgeable AI experts that are working on the right problems.
Yeah, awesome. And then to Christian.
I mean, exactly. I will just highlight again what I mentioned before: talent, genuine talent, authentic talent. People make everything. They can drive. They can understand the market. You need people that also, I believe, have a high degree in PhD in AI or psychology or physics or something related, because you need to be very creative. You need to be on your toes in order to understand the market, to create the culture, to create the products. So talent is everything, and leave it there.
And then Stuart, bring us home. What's your answer?
Well, I think that the critical success factor for product-driven environments, I think it depends on the product. So near term, the greatest return on investment for companies, and also for ecological and environmental responsibility, is reduce the amount of natural resources that go into your designs. You reduce the amount of natural resources that go into your designs, you end up with a stronger, better, cheaper, faster offering that is much, much, much more profitable. And that can be applied everywhere with, my view of artificial intelligence. Intermediate term, critical success factor is going to be going after batteries. Battery technology has not followed the accelerating returns of the semiconductor industry. And so I am very excited about people who want to come to us and say, hey, we need to go all electric. We need to make everything that we can capable of storing and a charge and discharging. And then AI critical success factor in the long term really applies to across the entire organization. When you start to think of the organization as being product and processes, underlying all of this, because we've talked about these particular applications, we've failed miserably in the past by having artificial intelligence be cloistered within the information technology department. We need to have artificial intelligence brought to the subject matter experts. So the subject matter experts, the ones who are creating the future, can tap the power of artificial intelligence and not have it be, secondarily at 1 or 2 degrees of separation applied for them, by someone who is expert in AI, however, not expert in its application.
Yeah, really good point as well to finish us off, because what the core theme across all of us was people drive challenges and people drive the innovation. You can stick as many AI algorithms and AI projects, you're not going to get very far without the people behind it. So it's a very good point from each of you. And I think we're going to wrap up and take it on to questions. But I just want to say, Chuck, Christian, Hedvig, Stuart, it's been an absolute pleasure, and really appreciate the insight you brought to the audience today. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thomas. Great moderator.
Thank you very much. And before I say something, we're not going to jump in the Q&A because also of time, but what I really would like to actually to give you, Tom, another 20 seconds to finalize, because you have a lot of insights, you're interviewing a lot of great people, and actually I would love to give you the last word of the panel.
Well, it's very kind of you. Really appreciate it, Dalif. And really, I mean, what we exist for the AI Journal is to exactly this, to hear people's voices on what the future of tomorrow looks like across various different sectors. So I'm very people driven and I'm very education driven, and I love to have the different opinions of what AI is going to do. I don't know about each of you, but I don't laugh, but I find it interesting when we try to judge what's going to happen 5 years from now when we don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. And what I keep seeing with AI, quantum computing, cloud, big data, autonomous vehicles, it's just, we're in the unknown, but it's a very exciting unknown. And it's just really great to be with great people like yourselves to understand what your viewpoint is and how we can, I mean, we're not doing this to be evil, we're doing this to help people. So that's where it always comes back to thinking this is here to make us better, not worse, make us more efficient, more collaborative, more creative, and I mean, more engaged with audiences like this and platforms like this. So it's a really exciting
Thanks
time.
a lot. And one of the most important things, Tom, whatever we're discussing here, whatever we're saying, doing, it's for your generation and the ones to come. I mean, you're in the age more or less of my daughters, and I think a message to all of us out there, whatever we do with technology is for the future, for these generations and the ones to come. So much to share, discuss, and brainstorm about these topics. Thank you for your inputs. Chuck, Hedwig, Christian, and Stuart. Tom, thanks for your powerful moderation. And I'm looking very much forward to have you with us together. Stay safe and remain with us for the last keynote now about AI in the aerospace. Time flies, and we're getting to the last one, the last keynote by Romaric Redon from Airbus. Romaric, you are a senior expert in AI and have 20 years of experience working on innovation and AI applications in the aero industry. You're head advisor on AI technologies for Airbus since 2019. In your role, you lead the Airbus AI and computing technology roadmap and partner with relevant internal and external stakeholders to foster AI adoption and maximize AI added value for the aerospace and defense sector. Romaric, please share with us how AI makes Airbus fly.
Hello, thank you so much for inviting me to this event, and I'm very glad, yes, to give you some insight on what we do with artificial intelligence inside Airbus. You may know Airbus for the commercial aircraft, but for sure there are other elements which we make fly, like helicopters, like aircraft, military aircraft, like satellite, like also unmanned aerial vehicle. And I will let you know how we use AI for these different platforms. So first of all, what do we mean by artificial intelligence technologies inside Airbus? So there were interesting presentations shown before. So we really see AI as a mean to provide assistance for perception, prediction, and decision task. When we speak about perception, if we deal with image, video, this is about computer vision, time series analysis, when this is sensor data, on natural language processing, when we are with text or speech. Also to do predictions and to orient the decision making, we use both data-based approach and symbolic approach, more physics-based approach, doing hybrid modeling. And finally, when we come to the decision, we can use a lot of AI method to do decision to support decision making, either in open loop system, for example, doing planning and scheduling, but also in closed loop system, doing controls, adaptive controls, for example. And as already said, I mean, inside Airbus, we do use data-driven artificial intelligence, which is mostly machine learning, but also symbolic artificial intelligence, which is really more the aspect, for example, of rule-based system. So a bit about our journey into with artificial intelligence inside Airbus. So we really started by creating value from our data, and we started from creating value for ourselves. So, for example, with the shop floor, doing analysis of data for improving the manufacturing, doing also planning and scheduling for the manufacturing. Then we also did a lot for our customer, and I will give you example of the way we create value from our data for our customers. And also the next big step is really to make artificial intelligence fly. And I will give you some examples of use cases where we use artificial intelligence on board our flying platforms. So let's go to some examples. So creating value from data, I will give an example which is linked to space imagery. And this is linked to a platform which we provide to our customer, which is the One Atlas platform. So in fact, this is the way we provide information extracted from space imagery taken by our fleets of satellite. So here, artificial intelligence was really a game changer to extract the information. And in fact, the value is not the image anymore, but the information that we can extract from these images. And here you have example where we extract boats, where we extract information about buildings, about cars of nearby buildings, about aircraft. And in fact, artificial intelligence is enabling us to do that at a very on a very large area, and also in a very timely manner, so we can really monitor that over time. So we can monitor the number of cars around a factory. And this is an example, but we can derive a lot of useful insight about, for example, the economic activity on a factory using such approach. And this is really a game changer for us. So another example is where we created value from our data also for our customers, which are in this case the airlines. So we have created a platform which is called Skywise, where we provide all information about sensor data captured on our fleets of aircraft operated by airlines. And the airlines are able to analyze this sensor data and really to build, to do anomaly detection. So we provide support to do predictive maintenance, doing anomaly detection, doing also health management. So really to analyze trends in terms of degradation that can occur on some specific parts which are aging or on an aircraft. And in this way, we can help the airlines to do preventive maintenance actions that would be performed at the right point in time in order to not lead to any operational interruption in their fleet. And this is really an important use case for many of our customers. Now I want to move on to more new things, which are really more about the future, about make artificial intelligence fly. So here you have an example of something we did last year on a project where we were capable for the first time ever to do autonomous taxiing, takeoff and landing of a commercial aircraft. It was an A350 aircraft. And here you have some snapshots from the autonomous takeoff, where we are able to align the aircraft on the runway center line using AI algorithm. And also, when it comes to the landing phase, you have there a tweet where we were showing the way we are detecting the runway and using this information to do the landing. And this tweet was retweeted by Yann Lequin, who was quite helpful for us to improve our communication. So we were very successful last year to achieve for the first time the full loop autonomous taxiing, takeoff and landing of a commercial aircraft. And this is something which is still a demonstrator, but which paved the way to really future innovation inside Airbus. I will give another example on Make AI Fly, which is more linked to the natural language processing. So the first aspect is Simon. So Simon is an assistant, a flying assistant, which is flying inside the International Space Station. And in fact, Simon was brought to the ISS to support an astronaut also last year. So we were able to test the interaction with the astronaut to support him in some of the complex experiments which needs to be managed inside the ISS. And we are now working on the second version of this interactive crew assistant, which would be further improved. Also, we do use, and we target to use virtual assistants in cockpit, for example, to alleviate the pilot workload and to do custom speech to text for air traffic control. So these are other examples where we get artificial intelligence to fly. Each time we do that, I mean, we do have to have a very specific care on building the right level of trust with the operator being the pilot, being the astronaut, and so on. So we do, inside Airbus, invest a lot into really what is called trustworthy artificial intelligence. So we are active in a number of research projects which are really tackling this objective of building more trustworthy AI, which means improving the fairness, the explainability, the robustness, also the embeddability, the ability to run, to get this AI running on board. And we also interact with a lot of regulatory bodies like the EASA, but there are many others that we deal with. And here I just point really the European agency, where we are building together the right regulatory framework for enabling to use AI on board. And this is linked to having a learning assurance, having explainability, and having also the right safety risk mitigation. A very small snapshot. I mean, since it was for me an opportunity today to highlight also some of the partnerships we have actually in Switzerland, because we do have a lot of ongoing partnerships, and we are also in touch with some startup in Switzerland. So in terms of university, ETH and EPFL, sorry, there is a typo for EPFL. I will cross-check that, correct that. Also, some startup such as Latticeflow or Neural Concept on Daedelan. I mean, these are Swiss entities which we already either have on our network or collaborate actively with. And there could be a lot more because we are currently really also involved in potentially providing a new fighter to Switzerland. And if we are successful, I think this will be also an opportunity to do a lot more with Swiss entities. So yeah, I tried to give you a short overview. So the takeaway are that inside Airbus, we are already using a lot of artificial intelligence to scale our competitiveness in terms of having products which are more competitive. And really, we are moving to be a world leader in safe and trustworthy artificial intelligence. And I thank you very much for your attention. I mean, these slides would be distributed. You can contact me on LinkedIn. And also, I mean, I will put links to some videos which are links to some of the demonstrator which I spoke about. So you will be able to look for more interactive content, let's say. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you a lot. Understanding the learnings from other industry is one of the most valuable takeaways. So saying that, thank you, Romaric, for sharing your and Airbus's experience with us. And you just said safe and trustworthy AI is definitely core, especially obviously in your industry. One of the questions that came along when you mentioned about autonomous testing, when you had your first tests, and you can imagine the question is, what do you think, by when and with which trust the passengers will be open for autonomous aircrafts on landing, for example?
I mean, the first stuff that I need to say is that we don't want an aircraft without a pilot. So we are not. This is not our roadmap. Which we are working to provide assistance to pilot and to improve the safety levels. So the point is not to get rid of pilot. We do acknowledge that there is a really added value in both what artificial intelligence can bring and human intelligence can bring to deal with all of the situations. So this is not part of our journey. Having said that, yes, I mean, we do demonstrate, I mean, we do work on technologies that could help to improve the level of safety, and artificial intelligence is one of them. So the demonstrator we've shown is specifically something very interesting because it enables to land on any airport, even airports which are not equipped with very expensive device which are called ILS. So only having the visual of the runway would be enough to land the aircraft. And yeah, so this is more technology demonstrator, and we will need to see how far we go with such capability, but the pilot is key.
Thanks. This is definitely the pilot, the human being is key, and you mentioned it. It is about assisting the pilot. It is about assisting the human being. And I must say, I'm trusting definitely the combination of the human and technology, because there is a lot that we human are not doing as good as technology. And I think it's the best if we benefit from the technology. So there is one question I would like to get along with you, but just a short answer. Is there a map for regulatory compliance?
There is not one, there are many, because it depends on the regulatory body. So when it is for commercial aviation, we need to agree with EASA, FAA, and so on. But if we go for space, there is another body of regulation. If we go for military or defense application, it's also regulated, but this is more on a national basis or a NATO standard. So we have, in fact, to deal with all these regulatory bodies to really work with them and to achieve the best approach where we can really leverage the value coming from AI, but also we ensure we are fully compliant to make systems which are safe for everyone.
Thanks. Again, merci beaucoup, Romaric, and bonne soirée.
Merci.
Now, let me summarize some of the topics highlighted in the last 3 hours. One of the most important things what we've heard today is knowledgeable AI experts working on the right problems. We need genuine and authentic talents, especially also in leadership, who understand what the technology can do for the people as well as for the company. We need to be aware of the challenges about the education for the people and the companies and their maturity. We want to unlock the new ways of thinking and possibilities to develop. We need to work in an ecosystem and benefit from the competences from other companies. And this is exactly what we are doing. Listening to each other, sharing experience, and speed up the process, not only by best practice, also by worst failures. Important is also finding the value of applying AI. There is not always and not everywhere connectivity. And right at the beginning, we've heard about the problems with trucks, for example. So therefore, the combination of AI cloud application with AI on edge is relevant. Also, we've heard about the importance of the acceptance of heterogeneous data sources and its impact. And last but not least, data is key. Data is key leads me to our announcement for our next CognitiveVirtual. Our team is looking forward to welcome you in the second week of May to discuss and learn about AI and data literacy. Please reach out to us if you have valuable experience, interesting use cases, or thought-provoking insights you and your company or institution want to share with our and yours AI community with no borders. Now it's again time to say goodbye. I would like to bring Andy again, who was doing the he was sitting back to the scene. I must say, if it would have been 1st of April today, I would have said, okay, that was a bad joke. Unfortunately, it's not the 1st of April. This was definitely, on one hand, my brain wasn't functioning in the way it should. Normally, we're having more problems with technology. Today, I had more problems with my own brain. So this is about human and machine. Now, remaining with us on social media, reach out for us for our workshops and roundtables. According to our Swiss DNA.
Yeah, share for success. Why wait?
Act now and share for success. See you soon in May. Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good time.